of the way, and Cape Town a breakdown on the N2 inbound near the airport runway. That's already pushing a big queue back towards Khayelitsha. The N2 into Cape Town this morning from Spine Road up to the airport. It's very heavy, and heavy mist as well around Cape Town. Day 2 has some poor visibility. Drive safely. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
A very good morning to you. In your SAfm sports headlines, it's soccer action as the University of Western Cape, they progressed to the CAF Women's Champions League COSAFA qualifiers semi-final, beating Zimbabwe's Herentals Queens 2-1. And at the Vuelta, it's Wout van Aert who holds off to win stage 3. We'll bring you details at around 6:30.
Getting ahead of the morning with #SAfm BreakFast.
The president and all powers that belong to the deputy president will go into the office of the president, and everything else that looks like the former deputy president shall be dismantled in the EFF and then gotten rid of with immediate effect. The GTU and all those who served in the GTU under the deputy president are dissolved. You want to deploy anyone into the government on behalf of the EFF, you shall report to the office of the president. We are taking charge of our organization now. We are tired of entrusting in the hands of wrong people. We have been betrayed for too long. We have been sold out for too long. We have been trusting for too long. We need to take it into our hands and run it ourselves. Comrades, this organization will live forever.
And that was Julius Malema yesterday in Soweto giving marching orders to the EFF ground forces in the Gauteng province. And I guess across the country, one of his most watched, most anticipated speeches ever, an hour and 30 minutes just about. He spoke there addressing the departure of Floyd Shivambu and the betrayal, as he calls it, of various other members in the party. In not so many words, describing exactly who they are. One of those sounds exactly like Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, who is also from the EFF Central Command team. Look, there's a lot happening in that speech. There's a lot happening in the EFF, and no doubt, just like how the EFF entered partisan politics, electoral politics in 2014, shifting the landscape, introducing a new epoch of opposition politics, the fractures of the EFF will do exactly the same. It will introduce a new epoch of opposition politics. It will change the landscape of how we interact with opposition parties through parliament, through government, and wherever they contest space, mind space, and for votes. Good morning. My name is Oliver Dixon. Thank you so much for joining me here on SAfm Breakfast. Lots coming up on the show. There's been a letter circulating of an ophthalmologist in Mthatha around extortionism that has led to him closing his business, and various other stories on social media has surfaced since that letter came to the fore. We're going to be unpacking that a little bit later on in this hour. It's been months since the International Court of Justice has issued its provisional measures in the South Africa application against Israel on its invasion and onslaught on Palestine and the people of Palestine. But why has that failed to garner the support and galvanize nation states in United Nations Security Council to effect and get on with the business of bringing about a sustainable ceasefire? Why have we seen escalations in violence? We're going to be speaking about that and ask whether or not the enforceability of the International Court of Justice rulings is losing its own credibility, given that nation states, especially allies to Israel, can just decide to opt out of it. We're going to be talking about that. Premier Panyaza Lesufi of Gauteng was going to be joining us in the show as well. We're going to be unpacking his State of the Province address that he delivered last week. We're going to speaking to Samkele Maseko once again on Julius Malema's address. There's lots more that Julius Malema said. I'm going to bring you some of those highlights a little bit later on in the show, so please do tune in for that. We're going to be speaking about what's going on at ABSA. Is it an organization, a bank in crisis? It has had various executive changes over the last couple of years at the highest level. The board cannot seem to enact a succession plan that stabilizes those changes. We're asking, is ABSA an organization in crisis? We're going to be speaking to Rob Rose about that. Lots more coming up on the show. Be a part of it. Give us a call, 086 000 2032. You can send us a WhatsApp voice note on 0614 104 107 and tweet me at Oliver_speaking on Twitter, Oliver Dixon on Facebook, 11 minutes after 6.
Big ups to all the women of Africa Dzonga. Incredible characters in various fields. When you set your mind onto something, your winning mentality is difficult to defeat, on and off the field. Your excellence in the world of sport speaks volumes. You are the great inspiration to the nation. Happy Women's Month, courtesy of SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
So why should I use We Buy Cars if I want to sell my vehicle?
Because We Buy Cars buys cars.
But will I get the right price?
Of course. We Buy Cars buys thousands of vehicles and knows exactly what every vehicle is worth. Their buyers deliver exceptional service and pay you immediately.
And how do I know what they'll pay for my vehicle?
It's easy. Visit webuycars.co.za or use the We Buy Cars app. Follow the simple steps and voila, you'll know your car's value in no time. We Buy Cars. Quick, easy, the best.
20 outfits of the Premier League are back on the battlefield for another spectacular season, with ambitions to play the world's most competitive and compelling football.
Rodri! City 3! West Ham 1!
This is the massive fight for the ultimate glory.
Caicedo, is he going to try and beat him from inside his own half? Oh, Moises Caicedo! I can't believe it! What a way to score your first Chelsea goal!
Experience the 2024-2025 Premier League season on Saturdays at 3 p.m. live on SABC3 and at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Also available on SABCsport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
SAfm Breakfast, helping you navigate your day.
13 minutes after 6 o'clock, let's take a look at your weather this morning. We start with some of your impact-based warnings. A yellow level 1 warning of damaging winds expected over the southern parts of the ZF Ngqawu and Pixley Kasiseme districts in the Northern Cape, and the Dr. Beyers Naudé local municipality of the Eastern Cape and Central Karoo of the Western Cape, which could result in difficult driving conditions and rapid spreading of veld fires. There's a fire danger warning for extremely high fire danger conditions to be expected over most parts of the Northern Cape, western parts of the Northwest, and southern parts of the Free State, the northwestern parts of the Western Cape, and most parts of the Eastern Cape. Otherwise, in your indicators, you can expect fine weather in Pretoria, Johannesburg, and Vereeniging. In Pretoria, you can expect a high of 27, a high of 26 in Johannesburg, and a high of 25 in Vereeniging. Bombela will also be fine with a high of 20. Bulugwane and Mahikeng will also be fine with a high of 25 and a high of 28 respectively. Vryburg will be reaching a high of 29. It will be fine and windy, while Bloemfontein will be fine with a high of 28. Kimberley will be fine and windy with a high of 30, as well as Uppington, fine and windy, but a high of 32. In Cape Town, you can expect foggy in the morning, otherwise becoming fine towards the evening. You can expect a light and variable wind becoming moderate to fresh northerly to northeasterly from the late afternoon, a high of 17 in Cape Town. George will be reaching a high of 18. Morning fog, otherwise fine weather expected there. You can expect light to moderate westerly becoming light to moderate easterly wind from the afternoon. In Gqeberha, you can expect fine weather with a high of 23. You can expect a light to moderate southwesterly wind becoming southerly in the afternoon, but a light southeasterly in the evening, while East London will be reaching a high of 30. Fine weather to be expected there. You can expect a light northerly wind in the morning and evening, otherwise southerly. In Durban, you can expect fine weather and a high of 29, while a moderate to fresh northerly to northeasterly wind. In Richards Bay, you can expect fine weather with a high of 31, moderate to fresh northerly to northeasterly wind over there. Pietermaritzburg will be fine with a high of 32, and that's your weather.
The Daily News Diary on SAfm.
Let's jump into the Daily News Diary. It was a busy day yesterday on the desk for the SABC News desk. Of course, there was the ongoing case yesterday in court of Pastor Mboro, It was a busy day in the courts yesterday. Do you just want to give us a snap of what came out of the Mbusisiwe Mqwebane case yesterday, Ava, and if there's any continuing coverage on that today? Good morning.
Good morning, Oliver, and sure thing. So the proceedings into, like you mentioned, actually, let me start off with the court cases. Today there is a bunch of court cases. So Mqwebane's case is continuing today. The application is being heard at the High Court in Pretoria in regard to Mqwebane's multi-million rand gratuity following her impeachment in September last year. So one of the other things that came out from the proceedings is her lawyer, Dalimpofu, was saying that there's a double jeopardy. So there's a double penal clause that this whole situation is unfolding with, meaning that his argument is that she's entitled to it and there's a double penalty because of what's happening now. Now, in other court news, and staying with the courts, the bail hearing of 5 accused drug lords arrested in connection with the manufacturing and dealing of drugs is expected to resume today. So I'm not sure if you remember, these are the drug lords. So there were South African nationals and Mexican nationals. So this was the laboratory that they found where there was drugs over 2 billion rand in a farm last month. And now the Mexican co-accused have abandoned their bail applications, but today the court is going to be hearing the bail applications for the South African nationals. In other news, to the Eastern Cape now, where the Enyobeni Tavern inquest into the deaths of 21 young people who died inside the tavern at Scenery Park in East London will resume today. So one of the customers, Nalo Mtizana, took to the stand to testify about the events of that evening. So she also pointed out that the tavern owner did make advances towards her and offered to buy her some drinks on the night in question. She is the third person to testify. And lastly, I think in some lighter news, because we all need a bit of lighter news, SAfm has launched a botanical garden in Richtersveld in the Northern Cape where it will grow indigenous plants. I'm excited about that because a lot of plants have been on the brink of extinction. So they're going to be working on that.
I'm excited for that. Sandpark, shout out to them. A couple of years ago, they took an SAfm team of various shows. They took us to the Skokune Lodge at the Kruger National Park. And now I'm an avid golfer. I've always wanted to play golf. Now, what's scary about that is that, well, there's a lot of indigenous plantation at the Skokune golf course, plantation that literally is not only indigenous but exclusive to that part of the country that you could see. But you could also see literally crocodiles on the golf course, literally on the grass. You could see lions, hyenas, actively hunting. And of course, sand parks, they've got amazing parks across the country. And it's I think people should, it's very cheap, by the way, as well. I don't know if you know what it costs.
I'm just hearing you saying golf and crocodiles. I'm not.
No, I mean, to enter any sand parks facility, if you're a pensioner, I think you don't pay. If you're a child, you may pay only 20 rand, and if you're an adult, you pay less than 100 rand across most of the sand parks across South Africa.
Not bad.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to the news diary unfolding across the span of the day. I'm keeping a keen eye on that case of the Mexican nationals appearing in court on the meth lab drug bust that you saw happening. I think that might be the biggest drug lab bust in the country's history. We'll pay attention to that as we get more details on that. 19 minutes after 6.
SAfm is celebrating its 88th birthday, and what better way to celebrate than with you, our loyal listener. We will be giving away 8,800 to 10 lucky listeners during the month of August. To stand a chance of winning, stay tuned to SAfm and SMS the keyword SAfm88 followed by your name to 41391 and listen to the station throughout the day where you could be selected as a winner. SMSs are charged at R1.50 per SMS. Free SMSs and SMS bundles do not apply. Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
There's been a lot going on in Venezuela. You would recall they had recently had an election, which the results of which are being disputed. Nicolas Maduro, who came out victorious in that election, seems to not be accepted by a number of protesters in Venezuela. Venezuela's politics has always been fractious and volatile. Professor Lyle White, who's a research associate at the Brenthurst Foundation, joins us for this. Prof, good morning. Thank you so much for your time. Perhaps before we get to what's happening now in the contemporary politics of Venezuela, give us the contextual background into where the instability started in Venezuela and how it leads us to this moment.
Yeah, good morning. It's good to be with you. So it really does start well over 20 years ago when Hugo Chavez, who is really the father of Chavismo, it's an ideology that has swept across Venezuela, he came into power, a very charismatic leader. I think most people either recognize the name or remember the character. He commanded a lot of attention, but also did gather a huge amount of support. And it was also at a time when the Venezuelan economy was buoyant around oil exports. Obviously, Venezuela, many people don't realize this, but Venezuela is sitting on the largest oil deposits in the world, which is amazing, but hasn't really come to fruition for the Venezuelan people themselves. What's happened over the last 10 to 12 years or so, Hugo Chavez actually died, and his chosen successor, Nicolas Maduro, took over from him. And he has now seen through a number of elections. This was actually supposed to be his third successive election, all of which have been contested and disputed, but none have been disputed as violently as this one. Obviously, I believe it was in 2019, there were similar protests because this was actually disputed back then. But the problem in the past politically has been a fragmented opposition, and this is the first time ever the opposition have come together. You asked what is actually behind the protests that we've seen. Venezuela has lost 75% of its economy in the last 12 years. I think that simple statement says enough for where we are. Over a fifth of the population of Venezuela, over the fifth of the population of Venezuelans have actually left Venezuela over the last 10 to 12 years. And Venezuela at one stage boasted an inflation rate of well over 1 million %. I think the economics speak for themselves. Poverty has dramatically increased, and it's probably the most, at one stage it was looking like one of the near failed states in the world. So apart from the suppression and all the rest, I don't think the average Venezuelan is living any form of a quality life in Venezuela at the moment.
Democratic institutions, do they exist and are they functional? Because that matters for how elections and electoral outcomes play out.
They do have institutions. They do have a judiciary. They've got the Electoral Commission, all of which are controlled and almost controlled by card-carrying Maduro and Chavista supporters. So there's a question of whether they are in place. Yes, they're in place. Whether they are functional, definitely not functional. This has been confirmed now by many of the independent observers, not the Western countries, I might add. And this is the interesting part, which we should be paying attention to from far away here on the southern tip of Africa. But most of the surrounding countries, all of the Latin American countries, have questioned the outcome of these recent elections, and including those who are ideologically aligned with the Maduro government, who have leftist governments in place, the likes of Brazil, the likes of Chile, even Mexico. This is a very, very interesting outcome, and that's something probably the rest of the world should be watching, is that contesting the outcome of the elections has not just come from the United States, the traditional ones, the United States, the Nordic countries, and maybe the EU, but especially the surrounding countries. They've asked to have these, the tallies or the each individual electoral station's numbers sent in, because they haven't actually been sent in and counted up. It was just announced by the Electoral Commission that Maduro had won a 52% majority, whereas these tallies have actually been leaked out in other sources, and the opposition, which is led by now Maria Moschada, who was not permitted to actually run in the election. She was banned from running, and now she's being accused of insurrection. And then Edmundo Gonzalez, who was the official opposition, after a counting of these leaked out numbers from these electoral stations, they claim that he has won, that Edmundo actually won close to 70%. And that's probably what has urged people to take to the streets, is there's such a massive gap which that can't be recognized in this supposed electoral victory that Maduro is claiming.
Let's speak to whether or not there's credibility to the claims that there's an insurrection that is underway. 2,400 people having been arrested since the results have been announced. That's a whole lot of people.
Yeah, it's a huge number of people, and that was just a few days ago. So I'm sure that number now has surpassed 2,500 people. What is very, very interesting with this is not just the number of people that have been arrested, but the severity and of the kind of the backlash from the government, a great deal of aggression, etc. So what we saw back in 2017, there was a mass uprising as well, huge protests across Venezuela against the standing government. There was also Maduro at the time, and they arrested in that time, just in over 10 days. There were a huge number of arrests, but in just the 2 weeks following this recent election, more people were arrested during that period of time. Now, obviously, this is an attempt by the Maduro government to squash any type of protest and avoid a mass protest. Well, this is what he was hoping for, avoiding the mass protest that they saw in 2017. It hasn't really worked because this has now become international, and we are seeing that there are protests beyond Venezuela itself, because as the West's attention goes on to other issues, it's been over 2 weeks now, and we know that we need to keep the attention on a country like Venezuela, because it lost the attention of the world with other issues coming up. And as it moves off, then that's when Maduro actually just kind of galvanizes himself in a position of dictatorial power, essentially.
So if violence and protest does not subside over the coming days, over the coming weeks, and the Venezuelan authorities continue having to arrest people, because it doesn't seem like there is any sign of the electorate, 48% of those who didn't vote for Maduro, calming down over the next couple of days, what then?
So the biggest challenge that we actually have is around Maduro's control over the military as well. So apparently the military top brass are very supportive of Maduro, but the other ranks are not. And this is going to be crucial. This is a pivotal point that has to be made. Obviously, Maduro also controls other institutions, the judiciary, as I mentioned, but what we have to realize is that the West's reaction further isolates Venezuela, and this isolation is an isolated Venezuela is still supported by very powerful partners. The powerful partners for Venezuela are the likes of Russia, China, and of course Iran and Cuba. These do keep Maduro in place, and this, whether Washington and Brussels like it or not, he will then have this type of support. But that doesn't really help the average Venezuelan. What we are probably looking for is a successful transition, and it really is a transition. I mean, all numbers, all indications speak for themselves right now. That a successful transition might require a mix of firm and diplomatic approaches, with opposition leaders needing to offer incentives for high-ranking officials to transition smoothly out of the Maduro administration. But also the type of support from the international community has not been accepted, both, and I must add, this is quite important, both by Maduro and the opposition. They have proposed a re-election, and the opposition have rejected that. They have proposed that the election stations are counted correctly and tallied and released publicly, and obviously, for obvious reasons, the Maduro government.
Just to pause you there, Prof. White, the reason the opposition rejected the proposition of a rerun or a fresh election is because they believe that Maduro's allies are running the electoral authority. How much credibility is there to that claim?
No, it's 100% credible, because they literally are card-carrying members of the administration. That's where the international observers actually first started. You must remember that the observers coming in from Panama a week before the election were stopped at at the airport, and they struggled to actually reach Venezuela to monitor the elections because they were disputing the electoral authority. It's a given fact now that the electoral authority are in strong support of the Maduro administration, but their claim is just to try and maintain peace and stability, which might be a credible claim to some, but it doesn't really speak to democracy. We need to see much more kind of independent authorities, and we know that better than anybody else when we do the electoral monitoring across Southern Africa and the rest of the continent. And this is where the problem lies: is that the electoral authority have made their decision not based on the tally, and they're refusing. Why would one refuse to actually release the actual the numbers from each of the voting stations?
Absolutely.
What reason would they have?
Yeah.
And so that's the biggest concern that we have. We need to look at what the response has been and what the proposals are from the likes of Brazil, from Colombia, and obviously the response from the president of Chile, who is Gabriel Boric, is a supporter of that ideological left-leaning movement, but who has said that it's almost impossible that Nicolas Maduro could have actually claimed a victory, because we've seen what the numbers are like on the ground in Venezuela, and now we've seen growing protests around the world as well.
Yeah, Prof. White, thank you so much for your time and insights this morning. We're going to have to leave it there. Really do appreciate it. It's just after 6:30 this morning. Let's take your latest headlines.
In news making headlines for this hour, proceedings in the urgent application brought by former Public Protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane against the Office of the Public Protector will continue today. The application being heard in the High Court in Pretoria is in regards to Mkhwebane's multi-million rand gratuity following her impeachment in September last year. In other news, EFF leader Julius Malema has rubbished claims that he has asked President Cyril Ramaphosa to be the country's deputy president. And lastly, the US has now formally accused Iran of launching cyber operations against campaigns of both presidential candidates while targeting the American public with influence operations aimed at exploiting social discord. I'll be back at 7 for SAfm News. I'm Eva Chipa.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic. SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. If you're on your way to Durban, there's a truck crash at Warden. There is a bit of a backlog of traffic just approaching that particular scene. It pretty much is the central Warden area, so just be aware of some queuing pressure. Midrand, Olifantsfontein, in towards Old Joburg. That's heavy today, coming across from Clayville. It's probably one of the biggest delays across the Gauteng road network at this stage. So if you do that Olifantsfontein run, you might want to duck off at the old Olifantsfontein and just keep yourself moving along that section of roadway. Cape Town, lots going on there. Some very heavy mist around the City Bowl area, perhaps even heavier than it was yesterday, so all your highway routes are already very busy, and there's a bit of drama coming in on the N2 as well. There's been a crash at Spine Road, just after Spine Road, a vehicle overturning, ending up in the Central Reservation, a crash on the Mewway on-ramp coming out of Khayelitsha onto the N2, so a lot of congestion around that, and then a broken down bus further in on the N2 near the airport exit, so it's really heavy from Khayelitsha, working your way past those obstructions to the airport, and then you stay in traffic all the way through to Hospital Bends. Rob SAfm Traffic.
This is SAfm Sport with Zai Khan.
A very good morning to you. Let's kick things off with women's soccer. The University of Western Cape progressing to the CAF Women's Champions League COSAFA qualifiers semi-final. This after beating Zimbabwe's Herentals Queens 2-1 in their final group fixture in Blantyre, Malawi yesterday. Elsewhere, Jamie Vardy's second half equaliser gave Leicester a 1-1 draw against Tottenham on their return to the Premier League last night. Tottenham boss Ange Postecoglou.
Yeah, very dominant for first half, but really wasteful in front of goal. Started the second half similarly. First 15-20 minutes very dominant, wasteful, and then at 1-0 there's always an opportunity for the opposition to come back in the game, and that's what happened. And we lost our way for 15-20 minutes. We just lacked a real sort of cutting edge in that front third, made some poor decisions, lacked some composure, and unfortunately didn't get the reward our football deserved.
In the meantime, Thierry Henry has decided to step down from his role as coach of France's under-21 football team after guiding the side to a silver medal at the 2024 Paris Olympics. The all-time leading goal scorer for Premier League side Arsenal took over as coach of the French youth side last summer and was under contract until June 2025, but decided to step away for personal reasons. And elsewhere, the Germany captain Ilkay Gundogan announced his retirement from international football after leading his country at Euro 2024. Gundogan, who turns 34 in October, was in the Germany team that reached the Euro 2024 quarterfinals before losing to eventual champion Spain after extra time. Tennis action, Aryna Sabalenka won her first title since January's Australian Open by powering past Jessica Pegula in the final of the Cincinnati Open. The Belarusian Sabalenka needed 76 minutes to wrap up a 6-3, 7-5 victory for the 15th title of her career and her 6th at WTA 1000 level. In the men's draw, the top-ranked Yannick Sinner sealed a straight sets victory in the finals of the Cincinnati Open, his first title at the tournament. Sinner, who turns 23 on Friday, beat the American Francis Tiafoe 7-6, 6-2 to become the youngest Cincinnati champion since 21-year-old Andy Murray won in 2008. And finally, cycling, Wout van Aert held off Caden Groves to claim Vuelta España Stage 3 victory in another bunch sprint finish. The Belgian charged to victory at the end of the 191.2 kilometer run. General classification leader Visma Lease, a bike rider, Van Aert holds on to the red jersey, finishing in 4 hours, 40 minutes and 42 seconds ahead of Caden Groves and the Spaniard John Aberasturi. That's how we wrap it up here on cycling. We'll bring you more sport top of the hour. For SAfm Breakfast, I'm Zai Khan.
The business update on SAfm.
It is 37 minutes after 6. That's 23 minutes to the top of the hour. Ndaleng Lichele joins us for the business update this morning. We start off, Ndaleng, with some company report news, and that is on AMD's stepping up their efforts to gain market share in the AI industry. What do they have up their sleeves?
Morning, Oliver. Now that's right. AMD is looking to take on NVIDIA in that AI space, and so it plans to acquire ZT Systems for about $4.9 billion. Now, AMD plans to pay for 75% of the acquisition with cash and the remainder in shares. Now, AI needs a lot of computing power to work well, and to achieve this, companies connect many computers to get computer chips together. This makes the design of the whole computer system very important, and that's why AMD is buying ZT Systems to improve how these systems and designed and work together. The acquisition is also going to help AMD improve its systems, and it'll also help it control the whole process and not necessarily outsource some of the other services. In turn, this will assist it with the turnaround time when creating the chips. Now, ZT Systems is a company that builds computer servers and creates solutions that help companies use cloud computing more efficiently. So they would assist in Amazon with Amazon Web Services and Alphabet with Google Cloud, whereas AMD just designs and develops the chips. Now, the deal will be closed by the first half of next year.
Yeah. Talk to us about Argent Industrial. They expanding their portfolio in the UK, but they're an SA-based company.
They are. Now, this is part of its geographical diversification strategy, where it aims to generate profit outside of South Africa. Now, in its latest deal, it plans on picking up UK-based Stanmode Group for close to 160 million rand. Now, Stanmode focuses on custom server and storage solutions, while its subsidiary, Mersey Container Services, specializes in containerized data centers. This just adds to the diversified offshore portfolio, which includes businesses like Fuelproof, which is a manufacturer of fuel tanks, Fluid Transfer International and Flow Fuel Support, a manufacturer of mobile fuel dispensing systems mainly for the aviation industry, and Cannock Gates that makes iron and wooden gate products. Quite an odd mix, if you ask me, but it seems to be working for the company. In its last set of results, its profit before tax from its offshore operations rose more than a quarter, whereas profits from its local operations only ticked up 1.6%. Now, Argent hasn't really been bullish about the domestic market, and so we've seen its offshore strategy kind of gain momentum. Here at home, it owns businesses within the steel and engineering industries.
Yeah, let's take a look at the indicators this morning. How did the markets close last night?
So risk still seems to be on the table, with markets continuing their rally. In the US, stocks advanced, building on the market's comeback as investors readied for the closely watched Federal Reserve Symposium later this week. We saw the Nasdaq and the S&P 500 clock in 8 consecutive days of gains yesterday. Over in Asia, those markets mostly in the green following global peers, but we are seeing some red in China, with worries about that economy's recovery weighing on sentiment there. Back at home, we had a strong start to the week. The JSE hit another record high as the all-share index touched an intraday best of 83,955 points, the highest level on record. It closed 1.1% higher. Now, the rand also continued to power through this ahead of the Fed minutes and local inflation numbers, which are out tomorrow. It's currently trading at 17.74 to the dollar.
And darling, thank you so much for that. Really do appreciate it. Back with you in the next hour.
Catch me, Bonang Mateba, on a fresh reality series that showcases the business behind being a business. Get to experience an intimate look at my life with family, personal growth, and my mission to uplift young women. Jet with me as we prepare to crown a lucky chaser. Be grounded, be entertained, and be dazzled. Monday, 6 p.m. on S3 is a date with you and B. Catch Bedazzled by Bonang on S3 every Monday at 6 p.m.
Our Tugs have a great plan to illustrate that they are not just intelligent students in class, but on the field of play as well. Meanwhile, the Juzuma-based outfit want nothing except for 3 points to run away from the unpleasant zone. The capital city confronts eThekwini. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Catch the Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game, University of Pretoria Ladies FC versus Lindelani Ladies FC on Sunday 25 August at 11 a.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
You could get a great deal on your car insurance premium when you call Outsurance. Be like 53-year-old Neo, who pays only 1,059 Rand to insure his white 2023 Ford Ranger XL DC with Outsurance. Get a quote now. It's easy. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
SAfm 104 to 107 nationwide.
17 minutes to the top of the hour. Now, it's been 5 months. In fact, it's been 7 months since the International Court of Justice handed down its first set of provisional measures in the South African application against Israel. Those provisional measures, in not so many words, had asked Israel to de-escalate the situation, while also asked them to retreat. In not so many words, the International Court of Justice had asked Israel to stop its onslaught on Gaza and the people of Palestine. And South Africa went back in March that year, and additional provisional measures were handed down at the end of March in a second application. And those provisional measures were a little bit more direct in instructing Israel to stand off. Various countries have joined the various applications. There's of course, ongoing applications and litigation in the International Court of Justice against Israel. Yet, nothing seems to have happened. There has been one ceasefire that has been negotiated since then. It didn't last very long. It saw the end of that 2-week period. But then Israel went back and sued their fire on Gaza and the people of Israel, and continue to do so. Just over the weekend, they killed in excess of 25 people in Gaza, many of which were children, by the way. Joining me to unpack this is Professor Andre Thomashausen, who's a professor of international law at UNISA. Prof, good morning. Thank you so much for your time. Is the South Africa application to the United Nations in court, which is the International Court of Justice, futile, given that the United Nations Security Council has done nothing about it?
Well, good morning, listeners. Yes, I've always said that this judicial activism before the ICJ has not saved a single life, and it will not save a single life. It is an instrument that was never designed to overcome a conflict, to manage a conflict. The United Nations Security Council is the organ of the United Nations tasked with maintaining stability, peace and security in the world, and it's the UN Security Council that should have convened the day after the 7th of October when the hostages were taken. It hasn't happened. The 15 members of the UN Security Council, faced with a very serious threat against peace and security in the world, did not start negotiating amongst each other how to put international troops on the ground in Gaza to stop the use of force on both sides, because we always forget to mention that daily Hamas manages to fire missiles, rockets onto civilian targets in Israel. So the use of force is not just one-sided, it continues from both sides.
But there is a disproportionate application of that because there's a disproportionate excess of resources. I mean, the one side has the United Nations, you have the United States with seemingly endless resources backing it up. But more than that, and this is perhaps the crux of it, what could bring about the enforceability of a body such the enforceability of an order from a body such as the International Court of Justice, given that if that can't happen, there is a disbelief in multilateralism across the world?
Well, I think there's been an exaggerated expectation. So-called multilateralism is a noble objective, but we don't have a world government. We don't have a world authority. We don't have a world police. We don't have a world army. So enforcement can only rely on the cooperation of states, on the way that great nations can barter with each other and say, we will do the following if you do the other. So it hasn't happened. And the whole history of the United Nations, the last 70 years, shows this. There are very, very few conflicts that the United Nations managed to overcome. The Korean Civil War, where Korea broke up in two countries, was a case where the United Nations at least managed to stop a war. South Africa at the time was part of the peacekeeping forces, supplied soldiers. We had other few examples. We, for instance, had in our region the example in Mozambique, where the United Nations mission, sending 8,000 uniformed personnel to that country, managed to stop a civil war and to introduce democracy in that country. But it's failed in the case of Gaza. It is astounding, maybe, that the big nations, the veto powers in the UN Security Council, could not agree, for instance, on a formula where they would have said, if we stop the violence in Gaza, then maybe in return the violence in Ukraine must stop, that you try and establish a link, a connection between these two wars. Because we always forget that Ukraine has now cost more than 1 million lives. It is a very bloody, it is a devastating conflict.
Why would there be a need for such a bargain given the unrelatedness of the two cases, right? I mean, Russia itself is facing its own case before, in fact, Putin has a warrant of arrest before the International Criminal Court. While an application is yet to be considered in the National Court of Justice and pronouncements made on that, there has been a global sucking dry, so to speak, of Russia. The world cut it off. It's facing sanctions, and its economy is running to dry as a result of that. Israel's not facing any sanctions, despite the fact of not having made any movement on the implementation of the International Court of Justice provisional orders. Why should a link be drawn between those two things for bargaining purposes?
Well, because they're two centers of threat to international peace and security. Around the Ukraine conflict, a nuclear war could break out in Europe, and around the Gaza conflict, the same could happen, because Iran is most certainly by now in possession of nuclear arms, and it is very strongly armed. It is a main manufacturer in the world now of the most modern drones and missile systems. So it's a powder cake. It's two powder cakes, and it would be quite logical to try and negotiate a trade-off, because Iran has the support of Russia, and Ukraine has the support of NATO, and one could try and trade one off against the other. But this is it's thinking out of the box here.
Okay.
Nations don't do things without getting something in return.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Really do appreciate it. 10 minutes to 7. Let's take your latest traffic.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's heavy in the Midrand area this morning. It's a busy junction anyway, but it really is under pressure. We're talking Old Joburg Road and Olifantsfontein Road, that junction there. So if you're coming from Centurion on the R101 down towards the 562, or you're coming across from Clayville, there's some very heavy traffic on that section of Olifantsfontein towards the Old Joburg Road junction. Crash in Pretoria to watch for, N1 South approaching the R21. There will be some delays as you come down from Rigel Avenue into that area. Truck crash at Warden, that is Durban bound on the N3 southwards of some disruption in that area. Also, just if you doing the run from Pietermaritzburg down to Durban, a new right lane closure going in yesterday between Market Road and Ashburton, so that's got all the potential to cause some delays. If you get a breakdown or a crash in that roadworks section, you've gone already from 3 lanes to 2, and with the crash or breakdown, you'll very quickly be down to 1. So it's just another reason to add plenty of extra time on your trip from Pietermaritzburg through to those flight connections to the airport on the Durban side. N2 queuing up at Munzamtoti this morning, just moving into sort of Tweeny Hill area, looking busy. And Cape Town, it's a heavy one along the N2 corridor. Not only mist to worry about this morning, but there's also been a crash between Spine Road and Meway in front of Khayelitsha, and another crash on the Meway ramp to the N2 inbound at Khayelitsha as well. So that's causing all sorts of disruption at Meway, Old Fora Road, and backlogging the N2 inbound for that as well. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
It's Elimination Week on the Tastemaster Junior. This Tuesday evening at 7 on SABC2 as the bottom 6 bake to stay in the competition. It's all about desserts as the contestants recreate their versions of a family favorite, warm and comforting pudding. But will it be enough to impress the judges and earn them a spot in the next round? That's the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday at 7. Repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. Only on SABC2.
18 teams are back on the hunting ground. No one wants a loss or a draw. They are all searching for maximum points in every encounter. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Do not miss out on the 2024-2025 Bundesliga season. Catch the action live on Saturdays at 6:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Also available on sabcsport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
You are listening to SAfm Breakfast.
The role of protection fees by extortionist gangs has been something that has been a part of the South African business landscape, particularly in hostile areas such as Cape Town, for instance, right? If you're a restaurant owner or a club owner in certain parts of Cape Town, gangs would have forced you to pay a protection fee. That has been a common practice. The construction mafia, they're seen as a similar practice, albeit slightly different. They want to be included in the contracting of certain projects. And if they are not to do so, they will bring a certain construction project to a halt. Some will in fact ask just only for the protection fee for you to be able to continue with your project. It has now made its way into ordinary, everyday, run-of-the-mill businesses in places like Mthatha. Over the weekend, a letter circulated on social media of an ophthalmologist that had to close their ophthalmology practice in Mthatha as a result of extortionism and protection fees, which they say threatened their lives, their livelihoods, and that of their family. various other people came to the fore and said, well, this is actually a very common practice in Mthatha. We're going to be speaking right now to Dr. Phumla Mchaya, who's a community activist. Dr. Phumla, good morning. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. How pervasive is this practice in Mthatha?
Good morning, Oliver. This is out of control. It is a case of a state emergency, and it did not start yesterday. It's white collar crime versus blue collar crime. Then we are looking at who is fit in the field. It's lack of strong, true leadership. The leadership should have long come down from top down to come and check what is happening in the communities. This started by lawyers that were rigging poor ordinary citizens' properties and land. Fortunately, thanks to the media, especially Cutting Edge, because people continuously call crying for help, we absolutely have nowhere to go. The legal and justice system is not for us. I call it just ice.
Yeah. What is the leadership meant to do from a top-down perspective? People had asked the military to intervene, and Deputy Minister of Defense Bantolo Misa said, this is not a military problem, this is a crime intelligence problem. He then went on to say that he in fact briefed the Minister of Police at the Cabinet, Lekgotla Senzo Mchunu, who then visited the Eastern Cape and went to hotspots with the Premier of the province, Oscar Mabuyane. I'm not sure what they learned on their visit and what they had promised the people, but what can they potentially do?
Well, I think General Olomisa is speaking the truth when he says it's crime intelligence, and it goes to say there is no intelligence in our country. I am working on the ground as a community leader, but I have more information and data. If the police were well capacitated, there are police that I'm working with on the ground. I do not want to say the whole of police system is infiltrated. This has escalated from a community level into business level.
Yeah.
Departments of, for instance, I will quote one department of public works. This problem started after 94. In 2001, Public Works wanted to increase the rent for its people, for its employees. The late Dr. Mafu answered by giving them an option to buy. Immediately, he was changed. And out of all the ministers that took control, that took order, the last minister, Mr. Matikizela, came to orchestrate and kill women and children alive. I don't know the evidence and the mess that he did in public works properties. Actually, the president of the country, as the father of the nation, I think by now he should have come down to Mthatha to see what is happening. This is a state of emergency case. Unfortunately, last week, a Minister of Police and Mr. Vusi Pikoli, they came to gather information on the ground. It's not that something is not happening.
Yeah. Let me ask this, Dr. Phumla. These extortionists, they obviously are from the community. Are they known to the community?
Of course.
And what level of detail does the community have about them that they have been able to communicate to state authorities like SAPS or perhaps the Provincial Police Commissioner?
This is so interesting and confusing because in most cases it's women and children that feel violated here. There's a high-density suburb called Mandela. They went to an extent of burning down women's houses. This is known.
Wow.
I have interviewed some of the leaders. I used my intelligence to send a thief to catch a thief. They came on board because they believe in what they are doing. They say and stated that it is upper middle class people that started to steal government properties. They will also continue to steal. I will tell you something said about Mthatha. We have a first class suburb called Fort Gate. We can't even take jobs. We can't even go out at night. Foreign illegal immigrants seeing that this is a battleground to come and do as they please. I don't want to go into drugs. Yes, we can interlink it to drugs, community violation, and business violation. But this is out of control. It needs to be attacked. But another problem is that we lack patriotism as citizens of South Africa. We are conniving with these criminals. For instance, ECDC, shame on them. People have been kicked out of their homes, the mafia style, like Gaza. I have evidence on that. There's a building that belongs to ECDC. These mafias, they brought it down. Season Street in Fort Gay. Because they are in touch, you don't know what is happening.
Yeah, unfortunately, Dr. Pum, I'm going to have to leave it there. That's all we have time for. We've run out of time. But thank you so much for your insights and sharing your observations and some of the work that you're doing, helping us to make sense of this. Really do appreciate it. Give us a call. I'd love to hear your reactions to that on 086 000 2032. I'm also taking your WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107. Tweet me at Oliver_speaking. Listen, essential cover from OUTsurance pays out claims in cash, allowing you to choose your own panel beater. SMS car to 43187 now.
Top stories for this hour. Mkhwebane's gratuity matter resumes today, and Iran accused of launching cyber operations in the US. Good morning, I'm Eva Chipa. Proceedings in the urgent application brought by former Public Protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane against the Office of the Public Protector, headed by Advocate Koleka Gcaleka, will continue today. The application, being heard in the High Court in Pretoria, is in regards to Mkhwebane's multi-million rand gratuity following her impeachment in September last year. Advocate Dalimpofu, who represents Mkhwebane, yesterday argued that failure to pay Mkhwebane's gratuity amounts to a double penalty.
In fact, in this case, it doesn't just impose a penalty, it imposes a double penalty, which the Americans call double jeopardy. It's because you've already, for the same conduct, you've already been punished by being impeached. Now they're saying you must be punished again by being deprived your gratuity. So it's worse than a penal clause, it's a double penal clause.
EFF leader Julius Malema has rubbished claims that he had asked President Cyril Ramaphosa to be the country's deputy president. Reports say some EFF leaders were promised positions, but Malema went behind their backs and that of Floyd Chivambu, who was the party's chief negotiator in the Government of National Unity negotiations, to ask Ramaphosa to be his deputy. Addressing the hundreds of EFF Gauteng ground forces in Soweto last night, Malema says there were no promises or negotiations about positions.
Today they say to you they were offered positions in the negotiations, and when they came to tell me, I denied them those positions and I went behind their back to speak to Cyril for me to become a deputy president. Maybe in their imaginations they imagined positions. There was never any position offered in the negotiations. I want to tell you here and now, I've never asked any position of deputy president from Ramaphosa, and I will never do that because I don't have anything to do with what Ramaphosa has to do.
The Gauteng government will be establishing a land invasion inspection tool in what the province says is the first development of its kind. This was announced by Gauteng Premier and ANC chairperson of the province, Panyaza Lesufi, following a two-day provincial lekgotla of the ANC. Lesufi says his government was aware that syndicates were behind the land invasions in the province, and he is committed to bring the practice to an end.
We've been seeing a mushrooming of new informal settlement literally every day. But we didn't have the capacity to determine where these new informal settlements are, who's behind them, and when are they planned, and how people are invading that land. With this system, we'll be in a position instantly know when a land is being invaded, and we'll then unleash our resources, because land invasion is affecting our provincial pairs, because immediately people are there. You must provide water, you must provide all the necessary services that are needed.
In other news, the General Manager for the Free State Umbrella Fire Protection Association, SAfm BreakFast, says the local community members in Tweefontein village in Tabanchu in the Free State and other neighbouring villages have suffered a devastating situation due to wildfires. Many villagers and emerging farmers have lost their stock after the fires damaged 700,000 hectares of the grazing land. BreakFast explains.
This is devastating. It might not be millions in rands worth of damages, but this has a high impact on the losses here that has been suffered by the community. And unfortunately, it's not done yet. It's not just the animals that's died. We sit here with the loss on grazing. We sit with the loss on agricultural infrastructure. You've seen some of the projects that they have gotten from the ground. Those things have burnt out. There's water tanks and agricultural infrastructure, and there isn't money and insurance to pay this and to replace it. So this is devastating.
And lastly, looking further afield, the US has now formally accused Iran of launching cyber operations against campaigns of both presidential candidates while targeting the American public with influence operations aimed at exploiting social discord. An FBI statement says Iran seeks to stoke discord and undermine confidence in the country's democratic institutions. Sharon Bryce Peace has more.
The FBI statement says the intelligence community, or IC, has observed increasingly aggressive Iranian activity during the selection cycle, specifically involving influence operations targeting the American public and cyber operations targeting presidential campaigns. The IC says it's confident that Iran has, through social engineering and other efforts, sought access to individuals with direct access to the presidential campaigns of both political parties in an effort to influence the U.S. election process. Sharon Bryce's SABC News, New York.
Recapping the top story for this hour. Proceedings in the urgent application brought by former Public Protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane against the Office of the Public Protector will continue today. The application being heard in the High Court in Pretoria is in regards to Mkhwebane's multi-million rand gratuity following her impeachment in September last year. I'll be back at the bottom of the hour. For SAfm News, I'm Eva Chipa.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Couple of issues on Joburg N3 this morning. A breakdown before Van Buren, the roadworks which have been there forever at Van Buren, and then a crash just north of Galuli's interchange. If you're on that run from Germiston, it's all getting pretty heavily backed up through Bedfordview into Edenvale through the interchange, and then the M12 and R24 routes in from the east to hook into the N3 via Galuli's backlogging as well. Here's an unusual queue. Joe Slotho Drive at Duranfontein as you come up off Heidelberg Road or off the N2 towards Hillbrow. That's quite heavily backed up. Durban, 3 queues to work through on the N2, one at Tweedy Hill, one between the N7 and Westwood Mall, and number 3 up towards a breakdown near Gateway. And Cape Town, a crash on the N2 inbound between Spine Road and Meway, causing a backlog coming through from Khayelitsha. And just note, most of the highways around Cape Town extra busy because of the poor visibility with the heavy mist. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
A very good morning to you in your SAfm Sports headlines. It's soccer. Kaizer Chiefs are bidding for top striker Fiston Mayela, and this is the DRC's red-hot acquisition. Amakosi fans are waiting and holding their breath, as well as the University of Western Cape. They topped the group to advance in the CAF COSAFA qualifiers. All this and more at around 7:30.
And that's your news for this hour. Theft, accident and 1 million rand liability cover, all covered by Outsurance Essential. Get a quote today. SMS CAR to 43187. Your car may be old, but driving without insurance is a risk every time you're on the road. Don't take the gamble. Outsurance Essential is affordable insurance for older cars, giving you up to 1 million rand liability cover and loads more. Plus, claims are paid in cash, so you can use your own panel beater. Outsurance Essential is priced for cars older than 5 years, valued under 125,000 rand and not financed. SMS CAR to 43187 or call 08600 60,000 today. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Getting ahead of the morning with hashtag SAfm Breakfast.
Said, what did I do to you, Floyd? He said nothing. It's not about anything. It's a political decision, which I've accepted. The two of us. When we finish, I said, call SG. so SG can hear. And I told SG in his presence, I asked him if I did anything wrong. Why? Because I must not repeat this thing to another person. I said to him, you owe it to me to tell me what wrong did I do, so I don't do it to SG. He said nothing. It's a political decision. I don't believe that, but I respect it.
It is a political decision, Floyd Shivambu answered to Julius Malema. Malema says he doesn't believe it, but he accepts it, respects it. What else could potentially be the reason? Malema spent an hour and 30 minutes yesterday outlining the conversation between himself and Floyd Shivambu and what had transpired before that, around that, and now perhaps even in the aftermath of that. Part of what we had heard, and over the weekend, the Sunday Times had reported that there was a fallout about whether or not the party should join the GNU. Many people rubbished the Sunday Times reportage on that. Somebody tweeted me yesterday saying that, yeah, it's propaganda media, and then Julius Malema came in and confirmed exactly that. Samkele Maseko, who is an SABC political reporter, you were there yesterday. Good morning. Thank you so much for your time. You were there yesterday. You listened attentively. Apparently, you're going to write a book about this. I hope I get to see the transcript before your publishers do. Perhaps take us to the core of this. The GNU debate in the EFF seemed to have had many people on the opposite side of Julius Malema. Who were they and what argument were they advancing?
What we do know here, Oliver, is that the fallout between the two, the straw was the camel's back was finally broken by the GNU negotiations, but the relationship had been tense for quite some time now, and I would take it back to the contestation at the second NPA between the factions Damapiano and Amatorokisi, and where there was confusion on where Floyd Shivambu lies. But ultimately, the relationship has now broken up. But what we do know is that Floyd Shivambu, Veronica Mente, Mbuseni Ndlozi, there were many of them, Fana Mukwena, who were pushing for the EFF to join the government of national unity, reportedly by our sources. But the two people I definitely know that were pushing for the EFF to be part of the GNU was Veronica Mente and Floyd Shivambu on this instance. But on how the nitty-gritty is, how it would work, that is not yet clear, particularly with Julius Malema now coming out and providing clarity to saying that his own deal breaker was the Freedom Fund Plus, and the DA going as far as to saying that he asked Floyd Shivambu and Mbuseni Ndlozi and Floyd Shivambu and those who were pushing for the EFF to be part of the GNU to say, what if the Freedom Fund Plus and the DA don't walk away? And this ultimately happened in Kimberley at the 11th anniversary of the EFF. Post that, when they were discussing these particular issues, he also references Dalimpofu, who is a member of the CCT, saying that he was even witness to this when he asked them, what if the DA and the Freedom Front Plus don't walk away? And he's saying now, he's perturbed to say that these people who were pushing for the EFF to be part of the GNU, they are now going in the opposite direction, not going towards parties in the GNU, but going towards the MK party.
Yeah, it seems like Julius Malema, and towards the end he says he knows that these traitors are still in the party, but he will live alongside them for the sake of unity in the party. Is it only Mbuyiseni Ndlozi that he spoke about there? Because he almost he was short of mentioning his name. Who else are we talking about here?
They're talking about those who are quiet on social media, whom have large followings. He's referencing many leaders. You can go, Oliver, and check there on social media who has defended the EFF since the departure of Floyd Shivambu and who has not. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi has tweeted a few things about yesterday's rally, just the poster, and also pretty much that was just it that he tweeted about the EFF, where Julius Malema was going to address those ground forces. Fana Mukwena has been very quiet. Advocate Dalimpofu has been very quiet. Veronica Mente said a few things here and there, but he was saying that those who've got a huge Twitter following and have a huge media following across the board of the broadcasting and print space have decided to keep quiet whilst the EFF is under attack, and he is saying that those are sleeper agents within the party that are double parking between the EFF and also the MK party, saying that he is going to weed out all of those who are sleeper agents, whom are not sure whether they're EFF or not, and if they are EFF during the day and MK at night. He wants all of those people out of the party, saying that they must leave now, they must leave immediately. But the long and short of it is that those whom Julius Malema perceives as betrayers and those whom are silent whilst he on the onslaught on the EFF perceivably, he says that they have betrayed the party and they must be chased out of the organization.
Just lastly, did you pick up the phone and call anyone after that? Did you speak to Mboiseni Ndlozi? Did you call Dali Mpofu? Did you perhaps speak to Fana Mukwena and various others, Veronica Mente as well, about their thoughts on this? Are they coalescing in the lead up to the People's Assembly in December this year, where the EFF will be choosing its new leadership? Could they potentially challenge Julius Malema, or are they likely to leave the party, and could we potentially see a factional offshoot?
To be frank with you, Oliver, I did reach out to Mboiseni Ndlozi during the course of the weekend, if I'm not mistaken. In my sense of the conversations, I know how he is, I know how me and him relate, and I could sense from the responses that he was not okay, and I decided to back off from him. Even in the visuals of the EFF's war room yesterday, you can see that he's not the Mboiseni Ndlozi that many people know. I can't say all of these things with concrete evidence. This is from my own observation and my own interaction with the man, and I'm saying that he does not necessarily see himself. I saw him at the 11th anniversary of the EFF walking with Adrian Snyman, greeted. Doesn't look like the Mboiseni Ndlozi happy chappy bubbly individual that there is definitely something wrong. And also the references of people's families, what they like on social media, what they don't like. One thing you don't do, Oliver, that any individual wouldn't take lightly, if you go and you attack Samkele Masego's spouse or partner, your first duty and line of defense of that particular individual or that spouse is you. And when they are attacked by your organization, you are caught in between. Sometimes you don't know whether to turn left or to turn right. And many of those whom spouses or boyfriends, girlfriends, who may have liked Floyd Chivambu's post of the best decision ever to join the MK party, they might find themselves caught up in that particular mess right now, and they don't know whether to dump their political party and go with their spouse. If they don't dump their political party, they're in trouble with their spouse. So it's a very finicky situation that when you engage with people, you must be very cognizant of, because emotions are definitely going to be high. So you must tread very carefully as well when you engage with them.
Yeah, and it seems like there is an organizational reconfiguration underway following Malema's speech yesterday. But Samkele, that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for it. Really do appreciate it. 17 minutes after 7.
18 teams are back on the hunting ground. No one wants a loss or a draw. They are all searching for maximum points in every encounter. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Do not miss out on the 2024-2025 Bundesliga season. Catch the action live on Saturdays at 6:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Also available on sabcsport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Every day our children are exposed to relentless marketing of unhealthy foods where they live, learn and play. This aggressive marketing of unhealthy foods to children can shape their eating habits and food preferences for the rest of their lives. I'm your host, Crystal Audison. Is big food stalking our children? Watch Chew on This on healer.org on Thursday, 15th August at 3 p.m.
20 outfits of the Premier League are back on the battlefield for another spectacular season, with ambitions to play the world's most competitive and compelling football.
Rodri! City 3! West Ham 1!
This is the massive fight for the ultimate glory.
I say no, is he going to try and beat him from inside his own half? Oh, Moises Caicedo! I can't believe it! What a way to score your first Chelsea goal!
Experience the 2024-2025 2025 Premier League season on Saturdays at 3 p.m. Live on SABC3 and at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Also available on sabcsport.com.
Hashtag we love it here.
Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
SAfm exclusive breakfast interviews, bringing you closer to the stories that matter.
I'm taking your calls and reactions. Give us a call 086 000 2032. I'm also taking your WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107. Tweet me. It is at Oliver_speaking. I'd love to hear your comments with regards to that conversation I just had with Samkele Maseko on Julius Malema's speech last night. It is find me on Facebook, Oliver Dixon over there. But right now, we're in conversation with the Premier of Gauteng, Panyaza Lesufi. Over the last week, delivered his State of the Province address. Premier, good morning. It was very difficult for you to put together a government, get a coalition agreement passed. How difficult was it to put together a program of action for the province?
Good morning, Oliver. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I think we finally did. We've managed to speak to all political parties, which is something that we've been doing across the province. We have realized that last week we've managed to get all political parties in the Johannesburg Council to vote for our executive mayor, Dada Morero, without any challenges. We did the same with the provincial government when we were passing the budget. Regardless of being labeled as a minority government, 80% of all political parties in the legislature voted for our budget. We tabled the State of the Province address today. We'll be debating the address, and I'm convinced that almost 80% of all political parties represented in the legislature will indicate their support to the speech. So we are continuing to govern all our municipalities and our province with the help of all political parties that are willing to work with us.
You made the claim that, and I really want to challenge the sincerity and veracity of it, is that the provincial government of provincial unity has been able to attract investment of over 137 billion rand, of course citing the Heineken brewery expansion program that they had announced at the President's investment summit a while back already, investment from US bank, food companies and mobile operators. It seems like you're drawing a link between a trust in the government in Gauteng versus businesses just re-announcing their capital expenditure budgets. Is Gauteng really and truly an investable province?
It is. We have attracted hundreds of investors. It's just that in a speech you can't cover all of them. You just highlight few of them. It's massive. If you move around R21, R24 towards the airport, you'll see the cranes going up. You'll see the number of companies that are investing in our province. Obviously, we'll be naive not to say they are not raising their own concerns, and they do. I mean, high on the agenda, obviously, is the issue of crime. But
many, Premier, sorry for interjecting there, but many argue that, and various business leaders have said this multiple times over, they say we invest in our businesses and expanding our businesses in spite of the government, not because of the government.
Well, it'd be naive to think that way, because it's government that must facilitate some of the things. Everything that needs to be invested in our country needs government approvals. It can be goods moving outside the country. It might be goods or land that need to be approved by a municipality. It might be also discussions that need a combination of bulk services so that you can have water, electricity, and sewer. You need government to work with. But majority of them, they engage us as well because they feel that we need to liaise with their either home countries so that there can be exchange of programs. But you also have an Africa Free Trade Agreement that they need to benefit. We've got special economic zones where they benefit out of tax relief.
Yeah.
We also are part of international formation like BRICS, where also there's some benefits for being part of that. So it'd be naive when we attract investment, you want to dismiss it as no, this is on their own, it's automatic, it's not, there's nothing to do with government. I think it's selfish tendencies that does not want to acknowledge the work that we're doing. I mean, check the Vodacom investment as well. I mean, we played a critical role. You check the AXA investment, you check the APSA investment of small businesses, and all the investment that we've announced is investments that we're active and we're at the center of working with those institutions or persuading those institutions to invest in our province.
Just two more issues here that I want us to touch on. In your State of the Province address, you spoke about making a claim for the hijacked buildings following the Kampepe report in the city of Johannesburg. Those buildings belong to the city of Johannesburg, not the province of Gauteng. What is the conversation about the rejuvenation of the city of Johannesburg, which once, many say, was a world-class African city, certainly is not at the moment?
What do you do when you criticize this government, Oliver? You quote the CBD. You don't say it's local government. You say Johannesburg has collapsed and Johannesburg is in Gauteng. When people didn't have electricity, even though it's a function of local government, people were criticizing the provincial government. We'll not fold our arms to say there is a boundary of some responsibilities that are within local government and provincial government, and not provincial government, and therefore they must not be attended. CBD of Johannesburg is an eyesore, it's an embarrassment, and we can't leave it purely to local government alone. It needs all of us. It needs national government, it needs private sector, it needs developers, it needs investors, it literally needs everyone. And how it collapsed, there are those that have argued that it collapsed long before 1994. But we're not going to argue and be sorry about it. We have to act. It's a risky decision that we've taken to revitalize it. It's not an easy decision. But we're excited as a provincial government that in the first 2 weeks of taking a decision to intervene, we've managed to persuade many companies that wanted to leave the CBD. They're now staying. We have also attracted back Transnet, which was also leaving the CBD. They're coming back. They're putting an investment of their new offices of almost 400 million. We are taking over the old Carlton Hotel. We're converting it to apartments within 2 weeks of taking a decision to invest. So we will continue to do it. And the Kampepe Commission will assist us to determine who owns some of these particular buildings. We'll speak to those owners.
So what is the plan, Premier? The city of Joburg still has to complete a court audit of its property stock. We've all seen the dysfunction happening at the Johannesburg Property Company. What is the plan from a provincial level? Are you going to ask them to manage the buildings? Are you going to buy the buildings from the city of Johannesburg? What is the plan about taking ownership and control over revitalizing the city of Johannesburg as far as its property stock is concerned?
We are convening an interdepartmental summit in Johannesburg to bring all stakeholders to develop what you have just asked me, to say how best can we intervene. But in the interim, we are putting almost 2,500 law enforcement agencies, from police, private security, our wardens, to patrol that city 24 hours, 7 days per week. We are also putting up new CCTV cameras across the city in the interim. We are also doing everything to ensure that the areas where we can immediately intervene with some of investment will do so. And we are bringing those that wants to come back to the city to talk to us. But we are convening that intergovernmental summit to say, Joburg, what are the areas you want to seed and what are the areas you want to maintain? Private developers, which areas you want to immediately come and invest, and you already believe you can't invest either because of crime or because of hijacked buildings, and all other businesses that are cut. Because to attract investment, you must defend the current investors, because the big investors already in the CBD. It's not that the CBD is abandoned. So you can't go and attract new people when those that are already there are not happy, because those that need to come, they'll ask the current investor, should we join you there? Is it fine? So we need to satisfy the current investors first and ensure that they are safe, they are happy, and we provide the necessary services, because you can't have that CBD where you can't account for water, you can't account for electricity because they're illegal connections.
And just lastly,
lastly,
Premier, in 1 minute, that's all we have left. The province of Gauteng's healthcare facilities have been a pain point in this province democratic dispensation for a very long time. You know, over the last 3 administrations, various hospital facilities having collapsed, quite literally. Shalom Makleke was on fire at some point. For a very long time, Rahima Musa didn't have water to have for its patients, couldn't bath patients, couldn't feed patients, couldn't cook for patients. The private sector had to get involved providing water tankers. Government later on got involved in assisting there as well. Residents want answers on healthcare. What answers do you have for them?
Well, we presented in the State of the Province address, if they read that address, that Rahima Musa, for example, have partnered with Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital that we've taken over, or we've partnered with some of their wards where the problem that we've just alluded to can be alleviated, so that we use that hospital. We've also used the Sticks Morewa hospital to assist those that have mental challenges. We've upgraded Mamelodi Regional Hospital. What we wanted to do, we didn't want to be all over. We wanted to identify one hospital that is in the township that can do everything that is done within the private hospital or beyond. And Mamelodi Regional Hospital, and I challenge you, Oliver, go there. It's a model of the future hospitals that we need in our province. So that hospital is done, finalized. We've got everything that we needed. There are theaters, the people that we've recruited, the skills that we've recruited. We are now duplicating that in all other hospitals. And in the speech, we have also indicated that we are building 4 new hospitals in our province to alleviate pressure and improve the current hospitals that we have.
I will go there. I want to go there with you on condition that you go with me to Leratong Hospital right after that in Kagiso. We'll go to Mamelodi, but then we have to go to Leratong Hospital in Kagiso right after that. So you can see the stark contrast of what is wrong with healthcare in South Africa. But Premier, that's all we have time for. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, and all the best.
Best wishes, Oliver. Thank you so much.
It's 7:30. Let's take your latest headlines.
In news making headlines for this hour, EFF leader Julius Malema has called for maximum unity and loyalty as the party faces an exodus of members. Last week, the party's deputy president and Malema's lifelong friend defected to the MK party. In other news, proceedings in the urgent application brought by former Public Protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane against the Office of the Public Protector will continue today. The application being heard in the High Court in Pretoria is in regards to Mkhwebane's multi-million rand gratuity following her impeachment in September last year. And lastly, looking further afield, Myanmar's Rohingya Muslim minority is once again facing violence after a deadly attack killed dozens of them in the Mogdo town. Eyewitnesses say they were bombed by an insurgent group earlier this month. I'll be back at 8 for SAfm News. I'm Liva Chipa.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Headlines on the roads this Tuesday. The N1 South in Pretoria. Very heavy backlogs. A crash at the R21. That's in amongst the sinkhole closures as well. So that is pushing a queue right back through to Linwood Road this morning. Also, collision on Joburg's Mike 1 North at Marlborough Drive. Heavy from Melrose as you head up through Sandton towards Woodmead direction and southbound. Everybody having a look at that. So quite heavy coming through from the Buccleuch interchange side off the bottom of the N1. Durban, 2 big queues on the N2 to work through, one between the M7 and Westwood Mall, and then you've got another one that forms out from Queen Nundy Drive through to a breakdown at Gateway. Cape Town, Old Fora Road, Mfuleni side of Khayelitsha, really jam-packed in there today between Meway and Spine Road. Things hardly moving. All the highways are busy, largely because of the mist as you come into the sort of central city bowl area. Heaviest of the highways is the M5, queuing from Grassy Park, Southfield, all the way through to the Coburg interchange. Give yourself extra time to get through Cape Town traffic this morning again. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
This is SAfm Sport with Zai Khan.
A very good morning. Let's kick things off with Kaizer Chiefs making headlines. They are reportedly bidding for DR Congo striker Fiston Mayela. Mayela, currently playing for FC Pyramids in Egypt, has been in sensational form and is set to be one of coach Nasruddin Nabi's top targets for the club. Although Chiefs have made several defensive signings recently, their latest move signals a clear intent to boost their attacking power. The Glamour Boys are now waiting on FC Pyramids to accept or reject their offer. Soccer action. The University of Western Cape progressed to the CAF Women's Champions League COSAFA qualifiers semi-final after beating Zimbabwe's Herentals Queens 2-1 in their final group fixture in Blantyre, Malawi yesterday. Elsewhere, Jeremy Vardy's second-half equaliser gave Leicester a 1-1 draw against Tottenham on their return to the Premier League. And tennis action. Arina Sabalenka won her first title since January's Australian Open by powering past Jessica Pegula in the final of the Cincinnati Open 6-3, 7-5. And in the men's draw, the top-ranked Yannick Sinner sealed a straight sets victory in the finals of the Cincinnati Open, his first title at the tournament. Sinner, who turns 23 on Friday, beat American Francis Tiafoe 7-6, 6-2 to become the youngest Cincinnati champion since 21-year-old Andy Murray won in 2008. Here's Sinner.
Was very focused throughout the whole match. I knew that I had to be starting off very well and making the important moments especially in the first set, which was a very important momentum throughout this whole match. And then in the second set, I broke him early, which then gave me confidence. It was a bit easier then to serve, and physically today I felt a bit better than yesterday. I recovered quite good.
And finally, cycling. Wout van Aert held off Caden Groves to claim Vuelta España Stage 3 victory in another bunch sprint finish. General classification leader and Visma Lease a bike rider, Wout van Aert, he holds on to the red jersey, finishing in 4 hours, 40 minutes and 42 seconds ahead of Groves and Spaniard John Abarasturi. Van Aert secured his 10th Grand Tour stage victory, having finished third and second on the opening 2 days of the Vuelta. Here's Wout van Aert.
That's nice. If it works out like that, it's worth to be patient. So it's been quite a while since I could raise my hands, and this feels so good.
More sport at the top of the hour for SAfm Breakfast. I'm Zai Khan.
The business update on SAfm.
In a short while, I'm going to be in conversation with Rob Rose, the editor of the Financial Mail, and we're going to be talking about what's going on at APSA. You would remember yesterday, Ari was out. The Sense announcement said he's gone. He's going to be away. He's going to take gardening leave service after October for about 6 months. And one has to ask the question, is APSA, who also released their results yesterday, is APSA an organization in crisis? Are they an organization that the Reserve Bank might have to consider having strict conversations with for the protection of the integrity of shareholder value? But that's not the results we're going to be talking about right now. And Dowling is here with us to talk about telecom results that came out yesterday. MTN and Cell C. Dowling, was it a good day?
It wasn't really a good day. MTN recorded its first loss in over 8 years. Now, currency woes in Nigeria have just continued to eat into MTN's earnings, and this time around those issues have driven the company to a loss. In the interim period, MTN recorded a loss of 7.3 billion rand, this from a profit of over 4 billion a year earlier. Now, the Nigerian naira has lost over 70% of its value against the dollar since May 2023, and as a result, MTN, which generates around a third of its earnings from Nigeria and has a customer base of 77 million in the country, faced headwinds due to the currency's decline. Now, despite the external factors, company CEO Ralph Mupita says the performance was resilient, adding that the strong underlying performance was masked by the impact of weaker currencies as well as the ongoing conflict in Sudan. Now, interestingly, MTN is one of the few local businesses that's kind of stuck to its guns when it comes to operating outside the country, particularly in Nigeria, despite those risks. It's, however, confirmed that it will be ditching operations in Afghanistan, Guinea-Bissau, and Guinea-Conakry.
And Cell C, they seem to be on a positive trajectory. There's been a turnaround strategy implemented at Cell C. Is it reflecting in the results?
It hasn't reflected as yet, but they are positive that they will start seeing a turnaround in results in earnings in the next few months. So it is making progress when it comes to its network quality, this in terms of download and upload speed. And to further improve its network quality, it's shifted away from owning and operating its own network infrastructure in favor of roaming agreements with MTN and Vodacom. Now, this means that customers get to enjoy a better network experience backed by the infrastructure of the two major players in the telcos market. We've seen a few players in the telco space opt for roaming agreements. Range did the same with Vodacom when it initially launched its mobile offering. Now, in addition to the agreement, Cell C is testing 5G with its network partners, preparing for the introduction of the technology on Cell C. Now, Cell C is the only South African mobile operator that doesn't offer 5G connectivity at the moment. And moving over to those financials, the group is confident that the changes will help it become cash positive in the next few months and gain market share. In its last set of numbers, Cell C recorded a loss worth 336 million rand, and as of the third quarter of 2023, the company only had about 7.4% of the market from about 11.4% in 2022.
Let's take a look at those market indicators this morning.
So concerns about China's economic recovery really weighing on the Hang Seng and Shanghai index, with both indexes losing 0.4% and 1.1% respectively. These risks not really filtering through to the rest of the region, where we are seeing the global positive sentiment for boosting stocks, with the Japanese Nikkei up 1.9%. In Wall Street, futures are mixed. Even with the upbeat sentiment, we are seeing some caution filtering through ahead of the Fed minutes being released tomorrow evening. Back at home, markets kicked off the week on a high. Both the JSE and the Rand at record highs. The All Share, however, retraced some of those gains, closing at 83,799 points, reflecting a rise of just 1.1%. The Rand, in the meantime, on a winning streak, clocking in 10 consecutive sessions of gains. It's sitting at 17.74 against the dollar.
And darling Michelle, thank you so much for that. Really do appreciate it. It's 20 minutes to 8.
Africa Update on SAfm.
Advocate Sipho Mantula is with us for the Africa Update once again this morning. We start out in Libya, where the central bank has announced the suspension of all its operations. Advocate Mantula, good morning. Go for it.
Professor Moni Liba in Jambo Africa listeners. Indeed, you will recall that post Muammar Gaddafi in 2011, there have been issues of insecurity in that country. But now when you talk of the Libyan Central Bank, one of its directors, IT directors, Musab Masalem, has been kidnapped. And now the bank has said that they have closed their bank until he has been released. This has been the challenge. This is the same bank that was being attacked a week ago. That shows that Libya is still in the challenge, both from the east and also from the south of Libya.
Yeah, this is weird. In Kenya, protests have been ongoing. They never really stopped. They've been relenting. They may have subsided at certain points, but protests have been ongoing. What sparked them was a massive financial plan that included tax hikes. It seems to be back on the table.
It seems it's back because the Treasury Secretary, John Mbadi, has confirmed that there are 49 measures that have been considered on this tax amendment bill. They are going to on the eco-levy tax on the waste management. They are also targeting the U.S. beverage Coca-Cola, which has been opposing the 10% levy on the locally manufactured plastics. Now, Mbadi, as you have said, he has been pushed to look at those exemption, also to look at also the triggers of the June unrest that have been going on in Kenya. As you know that William Ruto has been under challenge and attack by the citizens who have been calling for his resignation, for him to look at the budget and explore alternative revenue sources for Kenya towards rise. So these are the challenges that the Treasury Secretary John Mbadi is facing as Kenya is engaging on this issue of the tax bills.
Yeah, and Senegal has set up a commission of legal, tax and energy sector experts. What are they reviewing?
Remember that in March when Diomaye Faye came into office, Oliver, he did talk about that they will definitely do an audit of the oil, the gas and the mining sector. Now, Usman Sonko, as the Prime Minister, yesterday came out very clear that there is a commission that will be set up to look at the energy sector and to review those oil and gas contracts. Remember that France has been having impact, or Australia, they've been having benefits out of those oil and gas agreements. Now, Usman Sonko, Diomaye Faye, they are now living to their mandate and their manifesto to say they will definitely want the Senegalese to be the ones benefiting from this mineral and the oil industry.
Yeah, Paul Kagame in Rwanda had installed a new cabinet yesterday.
The cabinet of 30 compared to our bloated cabinets that we see in the SADC region, you know, Oliver, that Paul Kagame has got 21 ministers and 9 ministers who were appointed. There are new faces out of that team, but most of them, they have retained their office. And Paul Kagame, as you know, that has been leading Rwanda since 2001. He has been re-elected with 99%. Others, they are saying it is a facade, it is a injustice to the opposition. But Kagame has brought the cabinet yesterday. There was a swearing-in ceremony, even of the new Speaker of Parliament. The Senate President also was swearing. So Kigali is back on the governance system in terms of the parliamentary system.
And on this day in 1994, South Africa produced an international boxing champion.
I thought of looking at our archive 30 years later, you know, from Welcome Nita, now we are talking about Vuyani Bungu, who won the International Boxing Federation World Boxing title against the highly rated American Kennedy McKinney at Carousel in Swan. Remember that the same Kennedy McKinney defeated Welcome Nita. So Vuyani Bungu was doing a revenge and a repeat of South Africans making airwaves since 1994 as the champions in the boxing spaces. Asante sana, Oliver, as we're still in the conversation. SAfm observing the Women's Month.
Have a good Mantula. Thank you so much for that.
18 teams are back on the hunting ground. No one wants a loss or a draw. They are all searching for maximum points in every encounter. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Do not miss out on the 2024-2025 Bundesliga season. Catch the action live on Saturdays at 6:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Also available on SABCsport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game. 20 outfits of the Premier League are back on the battlefield for another spectacular season with ambitions to play the world's most competitive and compelling football.
Rodri! City 3! West Ham 1!
This is the massive fight for the ultimate glory.
Caicedo, is he going to try and beat it from inside his own half? Oh, Moises Caicedo! I can't believe it! What a way to score your first Chelsea goal!
Experience the 2024-2025 Premier League season on Saturdays at 3 p.m. Live on SABC3 and at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Also available on SABCsport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Keeping you informed and ready for the day ahead on hashtag SAfm Breakfast.
This is SAfm Breakfast. My name is Oliver Dixon. Thank you so much for being with us. When Maria Ramos retired from ABSA in 2019, at the start of it, Renee van Wyk became this interim CEO. She held that job for just about 8-9 months. After that, Daniel Minella became the CEO. He was in that job for about 13-14 months. Jason Quinn became the interim CEO after Daniel Minella was removed or left ABSA at the time. And Jason Quinn was in that job for just under a year, about 10 months or so, 10-11 months. And then Ari Rautenbach became the CEO, and he joined that organization, or at least he took that job in March of 2022, although he's been in the organization for over 25 years. And Ari Rautenbach is out. And he had been in that post for just over 2 years. The only organization in South Africa that has had more CEOs than ABSA over the last 5 to 6 years may have been Eskom. Rob Rose, Financial Mail editor, joins me for this conversation. Rob, is ABSA an organization in crisis?
Morning, Oliver. I think it certainly is an organization that is going through a leadership crisis at the moment. It's quite a strong bank in general. Its earnings were down, like its profits, but it's still a relatively good bank. But it cannot afford this kind of crisis at the top levels because it's trying to compete with, Nedbank and Standard Bank, and it's coming out looking rather like it's going through an identity crisis as well as a leadership crisis.
Yeah. Rob, you speak to traders all the time. You make sense of financial statements all the time. Let's try and make sense of this. ABSA's revenue was up 3%, far lower than the rate of inflation. The headline earnings are actually down 5%, and the return on equity for any shareholder in ABSA is down. Yet, despite all of that, it closed the day on nearly 5% higher on its share price yesterday. That seems so counterintuitive. Is it because Ari Rautenbach is out?
I think that's the obvious sentiment to take from this. When the CEO resigns and your share price goes up, it's clearly a sign that the banks thought it was a bad thing, and they're on a path towards resolving that leadership crisis. Having said that, ABSA did put out a trading update saying this is what's going to happen. So I suppose the share price has been reacting to that for a couple of weeks. The truth is that ABSA's share is far lower than the other banks. It's done far worse than any other bank in the country. And this was a bank that, you think 10 years ago, 20 years ago was the strongest when it came to the retail banking, when it came to home loans. ABSA was the one you went to. But it seems listless, and it seems like it's struggling to reassert itself. The whole era where Barclays owned ABSA didn't help. But it's really struggled to kind of put itself back on the map and compete with the other banks. Nedbank took Jason Quinn, who was the acting CEO for a while. I mean, so talent is leaving there as well, and that's not great for the bank.
Yeah. Now, ABSA is one of South Africa's perhaps most recognized legacy organizations and businesses. And yet what seems to be happening internally at an organizational level, if you speak to some of the executives working there, some of the middle and senior managers working there, and some of the shareholders on the outside, I spoke to one such shareholder yesterday, and if you look at what's being reported about ABSA, it seems like there is a morale issue, particularly amongst its black talent in the organization. What's going on internally?
Well, it's hard to say without actually being inside there, but as you mentioned, you rattled off the name of the CEOs in the last 5 years, and that's a staggering amount of people going to the top job and leaving. And when you have a CEO like Daniel Manele going in there and leaving within a few months, when you have Ari Rottenbach even there for a couple of years, that just reeks of a lack of identity. It reeks of confusion, and it certainly doesn't instill any morale in the team. And certainly there were issues clearly from the recent reports and from people I've spoken to around the promotion of black talent, and certainly identifying and promoting black talent within ABSA. And that's something that definitely needed to be focused on, and that's something that it seems the bank, amidst its identity crisis, just hasn't really focused on.
Look, just a last question here, in 30 seconds perhaps, if you have an answer for it. There aren't any indicators right now that there are governance issues at ABSA, neither are there any indications that there are compliance issues. The financial sector in South Africa is a highly regulated space. There's not much room for that to happen without it raising red flags long before the time. But a leadership crisis does spiral down into an organization where those such things can happen and slowly creep in over time. And we're talking here about an institution that is highly regulated because we recognize how vulnerable it is because it's people's money. Should the Reserve Bank perhaps ask some questions?
Oliver, I'm absolutely sure the Reserve Bank is asking questions. I mean, the Reserve Bank is an organization that doesn't take this kind of thing lightly because, like you say, banks exist on confidence. When confidence goes, banking goes. So they're very clear about that, and you can absolutely be sure that they have been asking lots of questions about ABSA's leadership. We've seen in the past the Reserve Bank has refused to confirm directors' appointments in the various banks. It's said no thanks when it doesn't want somebody in charge. So you can be absolutely sure that they are getting, they are sending thousands of forms, having lots of discussions. So that's definitely happening on the inside. What's clear is from the outside, from shareholder side, you need to bring back stability, and you cannot have a situation ever when you have 5 CEOs in 4 years. That just will never do.
Yeah, we're going to have to leave it there. Rob Rose, thank you so much for your time and your insights. Really do appreciate it. Let's take your latest traffic.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAfm.
We'll take your traffic on at the top of the hour, but let's go to this conversation now. You recall we spoke to the Swartland district municipality, the Swartland municipality yesterday about the retention dams that had burst and then the spillway that had caused flooding there yesterday. And of course that is of great concern because it had caused severe damage. Now those retention dams belong to the Department of Water and Sanitation at a national government level, and very specifically the spillway that was dug up was done so by engineers sent by the Department of Water and Sanitation. Let's speak now to the Department of Water and Sanitation President. Let's speak now, my apologies, rather to the representative from the Department of Water and Sanitation on this conversation so that we can get a sense of what it is that has been done by the department to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Mr. Wali Ramakopa joins us, who's the head specialist unit. Mr. Ramakopa, thank you so much for joining us. Really do appreciate it. Can you give us a sense from an engineering perspective, what went wrong?
Thank you, Oliver, and thank you to your listeners as well for giving us the opportunity. Oliver, maybe to give us a perspective of what transpired is that we all know that on the 8th, 3 of the dams that are on the Swart River, which is upstream of the town of Riverlands, 3 of them failed. And the mode of failure is that dam number 3 failed due to what we normally call piping, which is an internal erosion, and that caused the failure of the 2 other dams which are further downstream. However, there is a 4th dam, which is the most upstream dam in the strip. That dam we let's refer to it as dam 4, which holds more than 225,000 cubic meters of water. So that dam did not fail, but however, it suffered a structural damage on the downstream face due to the same damage that was caused on Dam 3. So on our arrival on the 12th, which is on Monday, from the department, we did an inspection of the dam that failed, those 3 that failed, as well as Dam 4, which had still contained water. And remember that dam
of cases where wardens, public servants, are being hurt, stabbed, or abused by inmates.
Good morning, Oliver, and good morning to your SAfm listeners. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Look, the safety of our members are very critical for us as a union, and taking care of our members is not negotiable. Recently, we've had 3 stabbing incidents at St. Albans, and that is obviously a huge concern to us. The two main concerns is basically the staff shortage, and that is following what we call a new shift system that they implemented. As far back as 2009, they actually implemented this 7-day work establishment, and what happened was that basically halved the staff into 2 separate divisions or shifts. And on that basis, the PSA made it very clear that we've got a huge concern when it comes to the safety of our members, because DCS or correctional services needed to at least appoint another half, if I can call it like that, or double their staff.
Yeah.
So that was a huge concern in that regard, and unfortunately, yes, till today we are still battling with that problem that arose as far back as 2009.
Can you draw the link for us? Rian, sorry, just the last question. Can you draw the link for us between personnel shortages and general safety in the facility?
Thank you very much. The personnel shortage and the safety, there's a huge link between the two when you get to the environment inside correctional centers, because you're sitting with inmates, and you're sitting with gangs, and you are sitting with gang members, and it relates to gang members wanting to get promotion in the gangs, and that is where the stabbings most of the time come in. So these inmates are opportunistic, if I might call it as such, that they observe when the correctional officers are guarding them during exercise, during lunch, recreational, and so on. They see when there are not sufficient guards, and then they are opportunistic by using that to their benefit, by then attacking these limited number of officials, because that creates an opportunity for them, and they know that the control over them are limited. So that's basically the link between the two.
Thank you so much for that, and giving us a sense of what is going on. Really do appreciate it. Rian Vosloo is the provincial manager of the Public Servants Association. I'm taking your reactions. Give us a call, 086 000 2032. It blows my mind that dams that had collapsed and caused serious damage in a community does not seem to have an identifiable owner. The province and the Swartland municipality tells us the national government owns it. The national government says, no, we don't actually own it. We don't know who owns it. We have to go and investigate that. What country are we living in? No, really, what country are we living in where dam infrastructure does not seem to have an owner that is taking responsibility for it? My goodness, tweet me at Oliver_speaking. Listen to this. Essential cover from Outsurance pays out claims in cash, allowing you to choose your own panel beater. SMS CAR to 43187 now.
Top stories for this hour. Malema calls for unity in the EFF, and Mkhwebane's gratuity matter resumes today. Good morning, I'm Eva Chipa. EFF leader Julius Malema has called for maximum unity and loyalty as the party faces an exodus of members. Last week, the party's deputy president and Malema's lifelong friend defected to the MK party. He was joined by Mzwanele Manyi with fears that other members could join them as well. Addressing the party's Gauteng ground forces in Soweto last night, Malema urged members to guard against those he said are out to betray their struggle and undermine their generational mission.
It is now time to build an iron wall in defense of our movement as we confront not only our historical enemy, but those amongst us who wish to see the death of this revolutionary movement. We must unite and close ranks against any and all elements that may seek to use our National People's Assembly as an opportunity to infiltrate and destroy the EFF. We must guard against opportunism, factionalism and self-entitlement, greed, and all attempts to distract us from our generational mission.
Institute for Security Studies consultant David Bruce says police involvement in crime undermines the public's confidence in the SAPS. This follows two separate incidents in KZN at the weekend, allegedly involving police officers. In the first incident, a wounded officer, who is suspected to have been involved in an armed robbery, was arrested after his colleague was shot dead in a shootout. And in an unrelated second incident, a member of the Presidential Protection Unit took his own life after allegedly being involved in a hit and run. Bruce elaborates.
One of the major problems that the SAPS faces is a lack of public trust in the police. But insofar as the SAPS continues to be, contaminated by scandals of one kind or another, including cases where rank and file members are accused of involvement in robbery, that kind of thing obviously seriously undermines public trust in the SAPS.
Proceedings in the urgent application brought by former Public Protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane against the Office of the Public Protector will continue today. The application being heard in the High Court in Pretoria is in regards to Mkhwebane's multi-million rand gratuity following her impeachment in September last year. Advocate Dalimpofu, who represents Mkhwebane, yesterday argued that failure to pay Mkhwebane's gratuity amounts to double penalty.
In fact, in this case, it doesn't just impose a penalty, it imposes a double penalty, which the Americans call double jeopardy. It's because you've already, for the same conduct, you've already been punished by being impeached. Now they're saying you must be punished again by being deprived your gratuity. So it's worse than a penal clause, it's a double penal clause.
In other news, the Gauteng government will be establishing a land invasion inspection tool in what the province says is the first development of its kind. This was announced by Gauteng Premier and ANC chairperson of the province, Panyaza Lesufi, following a 2-day provincial hotla of the ANC. Lesufi says his government was aware that syndicates were behind the land invasions in the province and he is committed to bringing the practice to an end.
We've been seeing a mushrooming of new informal settlement literally every day. But we didn't have the capacity to determine where these new informal settlements are, who's behind them, and when are they planned and how people are invading that land. With this system, we'll be in a position instantly know when the land is being invaded, and we'll then unleash our resources, because land invasion is affecting our provincial pairs, because immediately people are there. You must provide water, you must provide all the necessary services that are needed.
And looking further afield, Myanmar's Rohingya Muslim minority is once again facing violence after a deadly attack killed dozens of people in the town of Mongdo. Eyewitnesses say they were bombed by an insurgent group earlier this month. The BBC's Yogita Lemay reports.
More than a dozen Rohingya Muslims who fled to Bangladesh following the bombing have told the BBC that the insurgent Arakan army attacked them using drones by the banks of the river Naf in Mongdo in Myanmar as they were trying to escape. The group, which has been fighting against Myanmar's military junta, has told the BBC it has no connection with the incident. Videos of the aftermath of the bombing show dozens of dead, a significant number of them women and children. Rohingyas are among the most persecuted communities in the world.
Recapping the top story for this hour, EFF leader Julius Malema has called for maximum unity and loyalty as the party faces an exodus of members. Last week, the party's deputy president and Malema's lifelong friend defected to the MK party. I'll be back at the bottom of the hour. For SAfm News, I'm Eva Chipa.
And that's the news for this hour. Theft, accident and 1 million rand liability cover, all by Outsurance Essential. Get a quote today. SMS car to 43187. Your car may be old, but driving without insurance is a risk every time you're on the road. Don't take the gamble. Outsurance Essential is affordable insurance for older cars, giving you up to 1 million rand liability cover and loads more. Plus, claims are paid in cash, so you can use your own panel beater. Outsurance Essential is priced for cars older than 5 years, valued under 125,000 rand and not financed. SMS car to 43187 or call 08600 60,000 today. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very heavy coming out of Pretoria on the M1 South. This collision scene down by the R21 highway exit. That doesn't look too serious, but the traffic certainly is. It's all the way back through to the N4 MLF Valley Highway. Crash on Joburg's N3 going south near London Road. So from Limbro Park on your way to Gillily's, that all gets a bit busy. And there's just been a crash on the Mike 1 South near Young Smut. So coming from Houghton in towards Parktown, that's slow. Northbound will be just kept busy because of the onlooking factor. Two big queues in Durban this morning. M2 North, M7 through Westwood Mall stays busy. The M4's got a breakdown as you come into the city centre by the Esplanade off-ramp, so some additional delays there. And Cape Town, no traffic lights on one of the busiest junctions in town, the Bosmansdam Road, N7. So there's a lot of congestion coming out of the Bortersuck area, out of Edgemead, and of course the N7 trying to off-ramp at Bosmansdam Road stays heavy from Goodwood. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
Morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, it's rugby with the former All Blacks captain Kieran Reid saying the All Blacks must dominate physically to beat the Springboks. And in soccer news, Kaizer Chiefs have sent an official offer for FC Pyramid striker Fiston Mayele. All this and more at around 8:30.
Getting ahead of the morning with hashtag SAfm BreakFast.
Comrades, we are opening a new chapter now, and this chapter exists without them. If you want to belong to the previous chapter that has got them, you can go and join the previous chapter. We now are opening a new chapter, and this chapter shall exist without them. Our destiny begins now. We are marching forward without them. If you are still longing for them, you know where you can find them. They are no longer here. Nothing that looks like them is going to be found in here. Our organization is going to be a pure EFF. Our organization is not going to be EFF during the day and MK at night. Our organization is not going to become GNU during the day and EFF at night. Everything is EFF. We don't speak any other language except the EFF. One of the leaders of the MKP told me in Parliament that the EFF, some of the EFF leaders were so helpful, the way they welcomed us, the way they helped us here in Parliament. It was as if they are members of MKP. And I said, oh, which ones? Oh, that's good. Which ones? I was given a list of those that welcomed them. And they, for a second, MKP thought these people were members of MKP. How can someone think I'm a member of another organization? It's clear that you have not been with us. You have been with them.
Yeah, that's Julius Malema. I'm taking your reactions to that. 086 0002032. Stick around this hour. I'm going to be in conversation with Minister Blade Nzimande, paying tribute to Professor Mushe Nkondo. We're going to be talking to the general industry workers of South Africa. They want to bring to attention a report by the Livable Wage Network on the living wage in South Africa, asking for an increase of the minimum wage from about 5,000 rand all the way to 15,000 rand. We're going to get into the detail of that a little bit later on. And PMI, that is Philip Morris International, the cigarette manufacturing company, well, they want to stop manufacturing cigarettes. We'll tell you all about that on the other side of this, 10 minutes after 8.
It's Elimination Week on the Tastemaster Junior. This Tuesday evening at 7 on SABC2 as the bottom 6 bake to stay in the competition. It's all about desserts as the contestants recreate their versions of a family favorite, warm and comforting pudding. But will it be enough to impress the judges and earn them a spot in the next round? That's the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday at 7. Repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. Only on SABC2.
18 teams are back on the hunting ground. No one wants a loss or a draw. They are all searching for maximum points in every encounter. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Do not miss out on the 2024-2025 Bundesliga season. Catch the action live on Saturdays at 6:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Also available on sabcsport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
SAfm. Prime time all day long.
12 minutes after 8 o'clock, let's take some of your reactions on our lines. Let's go to Luqwan in Johannesburg. Luqwan, what's your reflection on Premier Panyaza's plans for the city? And I say for the city because he did very specifically speak about the city of Johannesburg.
Yeah, I'm currently working at a government facility in Johannesburg. Not too long ago, I heard the Premier talking about the safety and the government hospitals. I work at a government hospital. One of my colleagues' laptops were stolen from our clinic. And we went to the security to get footage or anything. And I hear the Premier saying that they're going to put cameras in the city of Johannesburg. Those cameras don't work. I challenge the Premier to walk around in the city of Johannesburg without his bodyguards, without his security guards, and we see how he goes walking around if he feels safe. And also my second point is government facilities, the hospitals, people are waiting 3 months, 6 months for scans and results. I don't know where we are going as the Gauteng Department of Health.
Yeah, Luqwan, thank you so much for your call and sharing your experience. Really appreciate it. Moses in Bramley. Moses, good morning.
Good morning, Oliver. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Go for it.
Yeah, man, I was listening to the Premier. The Premier seems to suggest that the depreciation of Joburg started way before 1994, and it's a lie. Because if I remember vividly, 1995, 96, 97, I was working at downtown Joburg. Joburg was still okay. These guys, the ANC people, they actually orchestrated the depreciation of Joburg. And today they are coming back as if they will do something. For 30 years, they didn't do anything. In passing, I was just saying that in passing.
Yeah.
But I just want to talk about Andrea Thomas, the guy that you were interviewing about Palestine and Hamas and Israel.
But very briefly, because you should have started with that if that was your main point. Very briefly, Moses, in 20 seconds, go for it.
Yeah. You know, I listen to Andrea every time. He seems to suggest, to me, he sounds like somebody who doesn't sympathize with the Palestinians. For this genocide that is perpetuated in front of our eyes by people who are just doing it deliberately, knowing they are untouchable. I think the world must stand up for this thing. We cannot allow people to kill other people and nothing is being done to them as if it's normal.
Yeah, Moses and Bramley, thank you so much for that. Really do appreciate it. Prophet OJ, you're calling us from Maike, and good morning. Go for it.
Good morning, Oliver, and how are you?
I'm fantastic. Go for it.
Oliver, I'm saved by the blood of God, Jesus Christ. Oliver, looking at the political landscape of the country, I always see a central point whereby lack of economic vision is a problem to all political parties. Yes, we have political parties with different economic ideologies, but unfortunately we don't have a common view which could bind and unite South Africans. That is why we have problems like we are seeing the EFF, and it is not the EFF alone. We are still going to see breakups in many parties, political parties, because of lack of a vision for the economy of the country. Once you don't have a strong vision, you are likely to see people disarraying in every area of life every day.
Yeah, Prophet OJ, thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. Let's speak to Lynn in Kimberley. Lynn, good morning.
Good morning to you, Oliver. Funny enough, is it Andre Thomas that you spoke to earlier?
Yeah.
Yes. What a delight, well, not a delight on the news, but what a difference to listen to his perspective, which is more balanced, instead of always having to listen to Naeem Gina or Zinat Adams from Middle East Center Studies. It was wonderful to hear a balanced approach to what's going on in Gaza. And this gentleman who phoned just before me, not this one, the one before, he didn't say a word about what's going on with the Muslims, the Rohingya Muslims who have been persecuted all the time. It's always what's going on in Palestine. And I said to Stephen at the beginning of the war, whatever happens, it will be against Israel because people, not everybody, but there are so many anti-Semites and anti-Zionists that phone in, and Israel is always the one that does wrong. Thank you, Oliver.
I mean, the court seemed to hold that view as well, based on the evidence. Thank you so much for that. Jimmy Limpopo, go for it. Good morning.
Good morning.
Ooh, Jimmy, your line is terrible. Let's try that again. Good morning. Go for it.
Yeah.
Jimmy, I'm going to put you back to my producers. Let's see if we can get you on a better line. Can't hear that too well. Let's have a listen at this WhatsApp voice note that's come through on our WhatsApp line.
Oh, my God. Oliver. Oh, it's very sad. Why every time those responsible, they always run away from accountability? Now those dams, they got no honor. But if an employed poor fisherman can be seen with his net going there, try to catch fish to make a living, he will be arrested for trespass. But now that the dam has caused the damage, he's got no honor. You're very bad. Nanlavana.
Oliver, hi, are you well? This is JCK Kaunda from Musina. Oliver, talking of extortion or protection fee shows lack of political will. A government has become talk show host, no action, too much talk. South Africa has become playing ground for crimes and illegal immigrants to do as they wish. It seems like a government has no idea what is the cause of crime, of high volume of crime. They don't have an idea what is causing that. Let me rest my case for now. JCK, Kaunda from Sina.
Good morning, Oliver. This is Agmatebola. Yeah, Oliver, I was listening to that Umam talking about extortion. It is so painful because the leadership of this country, they became mum when it comes to that. They just react for some times. It is so painful. People are suffering in South Africa because of crime. But when it comes to hospitals, when you ask Panyazali Sufi, they don't care because those people are using private facilities. So they don't care about us. We are suffering in Gauteng. Good morning, this is Agmatebola.
Thank you so much for that. Let's speak to Kenneth out in Davidton. Kenneth, you want to respond to my question yesterday on Australians living in South Africa? Sorry, South Africans living in Australia. Sorry. Yeah, go for it.
Good morning to you and good morning to all SA listeners. First time calling on this platform, but I've been a listener for a long time. I just think that South Africans will need to spread all over the continent and the world. It's actually a good thing to have South Africans living all over the world. I'm saying this as a son of a Mozambican father. It's easy for me to do business in South Africa buying products from Mozambique because I've got an aunt today. I can just send money to my aunt to buy me whatever I need from Mozambique. For example, Nigerians are thriving in South Africa business-wise because they have spread all over the world. A Nigerian can open a shop in Benoni and send money to a fellow Nigerian in India to buy him products in India. He doesn't have to travel to India, or she doesn't have to travel to China. Just sends money to somebody. So having South Africans spreading all over the world, it benefits us. This thing of us like living in a container, it has to come to an end.
Okay.
And point number two, Oliver.
Very briefly, Kenneth.
level of crime in South Africa, I think we need to deal with this issue of people thinking they're entitled to banning a criminal. Somebody who steals, people think that they can just ban that person. I think South Africans were a violent nation.
Okay, Kenneth, I am going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your call and your point. Really appreciate it. Let's speak to Crispin out in KZN. Crispin, good morning. Go for it. You want to respond to Lynn?
Yes, absolutely. I was directly and angrily opposed to apartheid, and I learned never, ever to blame Afrikaans people as Afrikaners. I mean, these are people who had suffered a lot. But the system that Afrikaans nationalism imposed on us was evil. And to pretend that opposition to apartheid was simply biased against Afrikaners is complete and absolute nonsense. Now, the same applies here in Israel. Jews suffered horribly. And I am so angry about people who deny the Holocaust, for example. But what Israel is now doing in Gaza and in the West Bank, first of all, it contravenes international law completely. Secondly, it is the most obvious example of genocide that we have seen in recent years. And to make it worse, this is supported directly, armed directly by the West. This is not anti-Semitism when we call this out. And there are major elements of the Jewish communities who understand that and who are fighting against what Israel has been doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Crispin. Really appreciate it. Crispin calling us there from KZN. Yeah, tweet me some of your reactions and views. It is at Oliver_speaking.
20 outfits of the Premier League are back on the battlefield for another spectacular season, with ambitions to play the world's most competitive and compelling football.
Rodri! City 3! West Ham 1!
This is the massive fight for the ultimate glory.
Caicedo, is he going to try and beat him from inside his own half? Oh, Moises Caicedo! I can't believe it! What a way to score your first Chelsea goal!
Experience the 2024-2025 Premier League season on Saturdays at 3 p.m. live on SABC3 and at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Also available on SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game. SABC Sport, the proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024, celebrates Team SA medalists.
Oh, this is close! Simbine and the South Africans finally get a medal with the silver, and at last, Akani Simbine is an Olympic medalist. I'm really pleased for Simbine.
Everyone has been wishing for a medal for me, and I've got my medal now. I'm really happy with getting the medal.
For the love of the game.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAfm.
South Africa's minimum wage was legislated a couple of years ago, and it is reviewed annually for increase purposes. The current minimum wage rate per hour is just under 30 Rand at 27 Rand 58 cents per hour, which translates to, on average, just around 5,000 Rand a month. Now, the Living Wage Network did a study into the impact of South Africa's minimum wage, and the General Industries Workers Union of South Africa welcomes the recent research report on the livable wage. In fact, the report makes us a recommendation of a 15,000 Rand livable wage. To talk to me about this is Mametlwe Sibai, who is the president of Jiwusa. Mametlwe, good morning. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Talk to us about the financial mechanics that takes us from the current 5,000 Rand average minimum wage we have per month to a minimum wage average of 15,000 Rand that closely approximates a living wage.
Well, the reality is that the current national minimum wage has no relationship whatsoever with the real cost of living for the workers. It cannot afford food, and I think you have seen a regular report cost of a food or household food basket that is in excess of the minimum wage itself. But you know, men and women shall not live by bread alone. They need clothing. They need money for transport, for daily commuting to and from work. They need money for a whole range of things that goes into the cost of living, including municipal bills for electricity, for water, all of that. there is just no relationship between that and the current national minimum wage. And what the livable wage study does, it factors all of those things into account and says this is the amount a worker would actually need to be able to subsist just on month-to-month basis.
Yeah, there's already been a great deal of resistance. In fact, over the last 2 years, farm owners and farmers in South Africa have resisted increases to the minimum wage of farm workers, saying that their margins are already thin. They've been experiencing droughts. They've been, if you think about sugarcane farmers, for instance, they've been experiencing serious losses due to externalities. A further increase of the minimum wage for farm workers would render them unprofitable, and many of them would have to shut down their businesses. How do we then talk about an increase in that climate?
Well, the reality is that the starting point has got to be, if you have an economic system that generates needs it cannot meet, it means that economic system is not working for majority, it cannot afford the needs of the people it employed to produce for it, and the people, that is us, the working class, it just means we can afford it. So that's a starting point, because where do we need, where do we get the need to have a housing? It's because we are displaced from where we traditionally stayed to come and stay in the city next to our working our workplaces. We also need, of course, the food to reproduce ourselves as a working class. We need, the electricity. We need water, because none of these things are for free. Under the current neoliberal government of the ANC and now the coalition with the DA and others in the government of national unity. So it is not that the working class decide on these needs. These are the needs of social production necessary for the very functioning of the system. And the problem is the crisis of the system until now is being burdened on the working class. Now, let's talk about the issues of the farmers. We have said clearly that there's going to have to be the question of a universal basic income, because there are always going to be those industries that obviously cannot afford because of imbalances in the terms of trade, for instance, between agricultural and of course the manufacturing sector, because of the law of value. And that's the reason that you need a universal basic income to ensure that the workers in farms, the domestic workers, some of whom are employed by the workers, by the way, to ensure that all of those workers are also guaranteed a certain basic income and quality of living that, of course, is compatible with the idea of human dignity.
Yeah, I want you to put and I agree with you on the social justice element of what you're advocating for. I don't think anyone can disagree with you on that. The principle is important. But I want you to, for a second, put yourself in the shoes of a business owner at the moment. And I want to give you the national context here. The economy hasn't been growing. That means businesses haven't been growing in terms of revenue. Importantly, the growth that we've seen in the economy has been far below the growth of the rate of population itself if you aggregate it over the last 15 years. It's important to note that, because if you can accept that the economy has not been growing and businesses have not been growing, how then do you expect business owners that are already struggling to meet it? I'm not saying we shouldn't have the conversation. I'm only asking you about the modalities. How do we get to that point as suggested in this report?
Well, I take the standpoint of view of the workers, but also objectively speaking. The reality is South Africa in a global capitalist system and its wealth market is condemned to a role of, a neo-colonial economy whose role, of course, is an extraction of a raw materials, that is the mineral resources, that is, the agricultural products that only our climatic and soil conditions can be able to produce on the basis of the cheapest labor possible that entail the colonial slavery, particularly of the black working class, who are now being paid below the cost of social reproduction. And that is the reason we say capitalism has never worked for this country, will never work for it. It's an extremely violent means of accumulation of wealth and power, primarily those big corporations that monopolize our economy, that have ownership in advanced capitalist countries like the US, Europe, now China, and all of that, and expense of the rest of us. And this is a reality we've got to reckon with.
Mametja, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. That's the president of GWUSA. It's 8:30 this morning. Let's take your latest headlines.
In your news making headlines for this hour, the Energy and Environment Director at Business Unity South Africa, Happy Kambule, says the constant increases in electricity tariffs sends a message internationally that the country does not have control over its electricity pricing policy. This after Eskom proposed a 36% electricity tariff hike. In other news, the 3 accused robbers in President Cyril Ramaphosa's Parapha Game Farm in Limpopo are appearing in the Modimolle Regional Court for pre-trial. The accused are facing several charges including theft and money laundering, conspiracy to commit housebreaking with intent to steal, and housebreaking with the intent to steal as well. And lastly, President Joe Biden received an over 4-minute standing ovation as he arrived to address the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. I'll be back at 9 for SAfm News. I'm Eva Chipa.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Busy around some collisions on Gauteng's highways. One is the N1 South, collision coming out of Pretoria at the R21. That's amongst the lane closures that are there permanently. So that stays heavy coming through from Atterbury. There's also a big crash on the N1 South at, beg your pardon, the N3 South at London Road. So if you're on your way down towards Eden Vale and Giluli, it's a big backlog there from Lindbro Park on the N3. Crash on the M2 near Rissik Street coming into Joburg being held up, and a breakdown on the N12 and R24 routes after they've merged going into Giluli. So delays on both of those routes. Durban looking pretty heavy this morning, going northbound particularly. A breakdown near Victoria Embankment on the Southern Freeway, that's heavy. Breakdown in the roadworks, keeping pressure on the N2 north from the M7, moving through Spaghetti Junction to that breakdown near Westwood Mall, and a crash on your way to Umslunga on the M4, just up by Virginia Airport from Blue Lagoon. That's fairly jam-packed as well. Cape Town this morning, everything going to go slow on account of the weather conditions. You might be in outlying areas, it's clear, but the closer you get to the city bowl, city centre, the heavier that mist gets. The N1 backing up from Belleville, the N2 from Kenilworth area, and plenty of traffic on the M3 this morning as you come slowly through to the Constantia, Weinberg Hill, and all the way to Hospital Bend. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
This is SAfm Sport with Sai Khan.
A very good morning. Let's kick things off with rugby. Former All Blacks captain Kieran Reid believes New Zealand needs to assert physical dominance to win back-to-back matches against the world champions, the Springboks, emphasising the importance of maintaining physicality in the upcoming tests at Ellis Park and Cape Town. With new coaches and systems, the All Blacks have struggled with consistency but showed promise in their recent win over Argentina. Now, Kaizer Chiefs once again are reportedly bidding for DR Congo striker Fiston Mayela. Mayela, currently playing for FC Pyramids in Egypt, has been in sensational form and is set to be one of the coach Nasruddin Nabi's top targets for the club. Although Chiefs have made several defensive signings recently, their latest move signals a clear intent to boost their attacking power. The Glamour Boys are now waiting on FC Pyramids to accept or reject their offer. More soccer news following his return to Sekhukhune United as head coach last week. Lehlonolo Siema has insisted he will have the final say on all tactical matters, with sporting director McDonald Makubedu now his boss. Siema got his job back after Peter Haibala was forced to resign due to misconduct even before taking charge of a single official game. With his contract duration for 3 years, Siema believes this will give him ample time to challenge for the league title.
I think that 3 years is enough. I think by the end of my contract, we should be challenging for the league. It's my personal ambition. It can happen early, it can happen, but I'm being realistic. I'm saying I'm giving this myself 3 years, and then at the end of my contract, I should be challenging for the league. And I think by that time, the players that we have acquired now will have gelled and played together for some time, a lot of games. And we see. I think that the team by then it will be ready.
Elsewhere, Tottenham manager Ange Postecoglou expressing disappointment after his side's wasteful performance in their 1-1 draw against Leicester City. Despite dominating the first half and taking the lead through Pedro Porro's goal, Tottenham failed to convert several key chances. Here's Ange Postecoglou.
Yeah, very dominant for first half, but really wasteful in front of goal. Started the second half similarly. First 15-20 minutes very dominant, wasteful, and then at 1-0 there's always an opportunity for the opposition to come back in the game, and that's what happened. And we lost our way for 15-20 minutes. We just lacked a real sort of cutting edge in that front third, made some poor decisions, lacked some composure, and unfortunately didn't get the reward our football deserved.
And finally, motorsport. The South African brothers Kelvin and Sheldon van der Linde dominated in the DTM Championships at the Nürburgring over the weekend. Race 1 took place in wet conditions from a safety car start. Kelvin led from the offset to take the checkered flag ahead of Mirko Bortoletti in second and Maro Engel in third. A win that moved him, that's Kelvin van der Linde, to the top of the championship standings, 1 point ahead of Bortolotti. Now, his younger brother Sheldon started from 9th in race 2 but battled his way to the front to finish ahead of Marco Engel and Marco Wittmann. Kelvin just missed out on a podium position in 4th but did increase his lead in the championship to 7 points. That's how we wrap it up for SAfm Breakfast Sport. I'm Zaikan.
The Business Update on SAfm.
Darling is back with the Business Update, the final one for SAfm Breakfast this morning. Darling, we start out with Thungela. They don't want to let go of coal.
That's right, Oliver. Now, they believe that coal is still king, saying that the efforts to phase out coal globally have slowed as energy security becomes a priority on the back of geopolitical tensions and potential supply disruptions. Now, we saw global coal prices reach record highs from about 2022 that also filtered through to last year, particularly after Russia was slapped with sanctions, including an import ban on all forms of its coal. Now, this left buyers around the world scrambling as Russia is a key supplier of coal. Now, the dynamics have somewhat changed, and this year we've started seeing a normalization in prices, and this has been reflected in Thungela's half-year numbers. During the period, profits more than halved. The miner said the milder winter conditions in the northern hemisphere led to reduced demand and higher gas and coal stock levels, contributing to softer benchmark coal prices. Despite this, the company CEO July Ndlovu says it's seeing increasing demand in emerging markets like China and India, which outweighs slowing demand in the US and Europe. Now, according to the International Energy Association, despite coal being the biggest contributor to climate change, it continues to supply over a third of global electricity generation. Now, the association said that while most countries were gradually replacing coal for power generation, the fuel was still important for iron and steel making. This, of course, until new technologies are found. And so Thungela remains quite positive about its prospects. It has cited issues at Transnet, but said the turnaround efforts there will start bearing fruits soon.
Now, South Africa's economy in the last quarter of 2023 grew by 0.1%. On average, over the last 10 years, it's grown by 0.8%. National Treasury forecasts, and National Treasury is known to be very optimistic about their own numbers, they forecast economic growth of 1.6% over the next 3 years on average. But American bank Citibank, they're saying 2%. How?
That's right. So they're pegging in growth of 2% for 2025 and growth of 1.2% this year. Now, the group has cited the two-part retirement reform, where it expects to see a windfall of payouts, lower inflation, and expected interest rate cuts. It says these factors are set to boost consumer spending after a few years of high inflation and elevated debt. In terms of monetary policy, Citi expects a 75 basis point rate cut at the SARB's next 3 meetings in September, November, and next year, January. Now, Citi's forecast is one of the most upbeat ones. As you've mentioned, we've heard very different from the IMF, which last month kept the country's GDP growth estimates unchanged at around 0.9% this year and 1.2% next year. Standard Bank said last week it expects a GDP growth of 1.1% this year, improving to 1.8% in 2025. Absa and Bank of America seem to agree with Citi, projecting a growth of 2%. Bank of America said this could be achieved over the medium term, provided that Eskom maintains its current momentum, keeping the lights on. The bank also expects an improvement in government finances, driven by a more favorable outlook as the country makes progress in eliminating, the load shedding crisis.
Yeah, I'd love to see the model they used and the assumptions they inputted into that. But let's look at your market indicators this morning. It's about 20 minutes to the opening of the JSE.
Now, it seems like the JSE is in for another day in the green. However, we might see some pressure on Sasol's share price on the back of its downbeat earnings. The group's out with annual results today, recording an over 60% plunge in earnings. This set of results are also the first under the new CEO, Simon Baloyi. So we'll be keeping an eye out on what Baloyi has to say about the group's outlook. Meanwhile, on the currency front, the rand is still on a roll as it recorded gains for 10 consecutive sessions. It's currently trading at 17.74 against the greenback. Over in Asia, markets on track to end the day on a mixed note. Pressure really being felt in China over there, with the Shanghai index and Hong Kong's Hang Seng in negative territory. And while concerns around China's economy weigh, we're seeing some caution ahead of the Fed minutes in the US. On the back of that, future markets are trading in mixed territory.
Darling, thank you so much for that. Really do appreciate it. 19 minutes to the top of the hour.
It's Elimination Week on the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday evening at 7 on SABC2 as the bottom 6 bake to stay in the competition. It's all about desserts as the contestants recreate their versions of a family favorite, warm and comforting pudding. But will it be enough to impress the judges and earn them a spot in the next round? That's the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday at 7. Repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. Only on SABC2.
SABC Sport, the proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024, celebrates Team SA medalists.
A brilliant silver for Johan van Dijk.
The plan was to win a medal. That was the goal. So I'm just so grateful and thankful that everything went as it should. For me, it's to be an inspiration to all the younger girls in South Africa. There's so much power and passion. I think our South African women really have a lot of resilience.
For the love of the game.
SAfm. Prime time all day long.
As the world continues to mourn the passing of African giant Professor Mushe Nkondo, Minister Blade Nzimande is mourning the death of a friend, not just someone he looked to from a distance, an actual friend. Minister, good morning. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oliver, to you and the SAfm listeners, thanks for inviting me.
Minister, I don't know if you recall, a couple of years ago, I'm not too sure, I think it may have been in 2021, 2022 sometime, I was doing a broadcast at the University of Limpopo Turfloop campus, and you were there. I think it was a Heritage Day celebration, and you came into my broadcast van and brought with you Professor Nkondo, and you sat side by side with him. I think I have a photo. In fact, Kathy's producer Lebu has a photo of that. I would like to have that photo. Yeah, and we spoke there about language, heritage, culture, and you and Professor Nkondo had a deeply enriching conversation with me that day. That was actually the first time I had interviewed him, and there was a rapport I could not miss, and that is a rapport of two friends doing together the things they've always done across life. Talk to us about the role Dr. Nkondo played in your life as an intellectual, but also as a friend.
Yes, thank you very much, Oliver. I'm glad actually you are remembering that. Firstly, let me start by expressing my condolences to his family, relatives, as well as close colleagues. I had known actually Professor Nkondo from the 1980s. In the depth of the struggle against apartheid. And he has a very special place in the history of that struggle, and actually saw a very clear connection to him and even his own intellectual practice and writings between intellectual work and the liberation of the majority of the people of our country.
In fact, at some stage we were together working very closely with a broad coalition of anti-apartheid organizations in education called the National Education Coordinating Committee, the NECC. And a very dedicated, one would also call him a radical scholar, an organic intellectual, and an activist at the same time, which is very important. He just didn't believe in classrooms, lectures, although he was very good. His students loved him too, but he actually being an activist. That is when the first time that I met Professor Nkondo. And since then, we actually work together. Also, he belongs to what I would call a very special generation of academics, because he was amongst the first group of vice-chancellors in 1994 that were faced with a huge task of actually seeking to transform universities that have been molded by decades of apartheid, racially, not only racially, by the way, also in an ethno-first nationalist way, being separated. You know, for instance, it was the VC of University of Limpopo, which was University of the North then, and also University of Venda, played a very huge role in terms of repositioning these universities to be part of a post-apartheid South Africa.
Yeah. Now, many years ago, again, a memory I want to take you to. Many years ago, in the Apartheid Museum, you debated Karima Brown on the state of Marxism and communism in South Africa and whether or not communism has died a painfully slow death because it was co-opted by private capital in the country. Professor Nkondo, much like Karima, held that view that the real communist muscle of South Africa has been killed by the politics of governance, criticizing you very specifically. I would imagine you guys didn't agree all the time.
Yes, we always debated with Professor Nkondo. In fact, I enjoyed that, rather than us, agreeing on. We used to debate on a number of things. Of course, I wouldn't agree with his conclusion about today's communists, but he was raising a very important point. We live in a capitalist society, and capitalists in South Africa over centuries have been very smart and actually co-opt government and even sections of the leadership of the liberation movement onto their side, so that we actually continue to be a society that continues to actually benefit a few. Professor Nkondo actually also, his own intellectual and political outlook was influenced very well known, progressive authors, radical, post-independent intellectuals like Frantz Fanon, Amilcar Cabral, CLR James, Steve Biko, and so on. And also, as I have said, never separated intellectual work, from cultural struggles, from development of society, especially rural development, that he was also very passionate about. It's a kind of intellectual we need even more today, by the way.
Yeah.
When we are faced with these kinds of challenges that we are actually faced with, persistent, structural, stubborn unemployment, the issue of people very wealthy when we are actually living in a sea of poverty, and that we need that kind of scholarship in our institutions of higher learning, especially, so that we produce graduates who actually understand that they are South African graduates who are actually having to operate in a particular environment. Professor Nkondo was really such a powerful person. In fact, he passes away, he was still active.
Yeah. Actually, let's speak to that.
Circles.
Yeah, let's speak to that, because when you were Minister of Higher Education, which you no longer are, you engaged with Professor Nkondo at that level. Of course, he has a wealth of experience, having been a Vice-Chancellor and Deputy Vice-Chancellor, and having lectured across the world, having one of the highest research outputs in South Africa. But as Minister of Science and Technology, you would have also engaged with him, which you now serve as continuously, because he was the chairperson of the technical team and reference group that drafted a policy document on indigenous knowledge systems. Talk to us about that work and whether or not we'll see any movement and implementation on that, specifically in an honoring of his legacy.
Yes, he played a very important role, in fact, working with the department that I'm leading at the moment. in terms of indigenous knowledge system. He was one of the people who actually drafted our main document, and we've made lots of progress on that score. Firstly, Oliver, we are now working with our traditional healers, for instance, because we want to work closely with the kinds of herbs that they are using, because they are very important, because they could actually be able to identify medicines. In fact, medicines evolve out of that. And South Africa, by the way, we are in the top 5 of the most biodiverse countries. And our research tells us that we haven't studied even more than 10% of all the species that we have in this country. Professor Kondo was very passionate about those things. But indigenous knowledge systems, by the way, do not only relate to muti, if you like, that you actually are using either by drinking and so on, but also traditional methods of dealing with mental health issues.
Yeah.
Because historically what is strong about African communities, historically, is that people who had mental health challenges were not isolated into institutions, They were actually looked after.
Oh, Minister Nzimande, your line is just cutting there.
It has contributed a lot in terms of mental health practices even today.
Yeah. That's where we're going to have to leave it. Minister Blaine Nzimande, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sharing your fond memories of Professor Nkondo and honoring his legacy. It really is a great loss to the country. Minister Blade Nzimande over there. 9 minutes to the top of the hour.
SAfm, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
N1 South through Pretoria is starting to ease after an earlier crash down by the R21. The focus moves to a big collision on Joburg's N3 South near London Road. A couple of lanes are closed, and that's pushed traffic all the way back through Marlborough Drive and getting back towards Buccleuch. So if you're coming through Buccleuch and your destination is the airport and it's time critical, or you've got a meeting and it's time critical, you might want to think about just rerouting at Buccleuch and hitting some alternative routes. One of those probably wouldn't include the Mike 1 South, because Buccleuch down to Marlborough Drive, that remains heavy. Still got that crash on the M2 westbound before Crown. So coming through from the Benrose side, you will hit some delays there. Durban's had a pretty busy Tuesday morning with some breakdowns. The one on the M4 going into Congella, that's being cleared. So that run into city centre's fine now. The stationary vehicle at Westwood Mall on the M2 North, in amongst all the lane restrictions still there, and that's quite a heavy backlog. And Cape Town, the heaviness on the highway networks into the CBD stays with us. Still very heavy blanket of mist around the City Bowl and central Cape Town area. You might be outlying a little bit, and it's clear skies and sunny, but as you get into the city centre area and the approaches, it all gets very, very thick mist. So you've got the N1, which is backed up from Plattercliff Hill, the N2 from Langa, the M5 still heavy from Kenilworth, and if you're coming out of Tableview, still plenty of traffic, Marine Drive from Bayside through to Racecourse Road, and no traffic lights, Bosman's Dam at the N7, so been some additional delays in that sort of Summer Greens, Edgemead area. Rob Byrne, SAfm Traffic.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAfm, let's talk.
It's been a jam-packed show, a lot of things discussed on the show today. Let's get to some of your reactions on some of the conversations and stories we covered here on the show this morning.
Morning, Mr. Oliver. I think Mr. Malema must stop this thing of saying public that those who want to leave the EFF must just leave. Even if he remains alone in the party, it will be fine. Because I think he agrees, but indirectly, with the question posed by one of the journalists there on this day at the press briefing, saying, is it this the beginning of the end of the EFF? Because the party is a party with members or followers. If there's no members, there's no party. So I think it's time now for him to be humble. Thank you. It's Kango Shibase here.
Thank you so much for that. Really do appreciate it. I must say, on the press Malema had where Floyd announced his resignation, one thought that there was a maturity about it, that there was a sense of stillness about it. Malema even said, if you ever want to come back, the door is open, and now the door is quite literally closed. more importantly, in his letter, Floyd Chivambo said, I hope this won't turn into a character assassination campaign after the fact. And it seems like it's turning out into exactly that.
Oliver, good morning to you. Good morning to your team. Always brilliant. Great show. Keep it up. It's Uncle JJ, the truck driver. You see, Oliver, Banyaza Lusufi now is too talkative. Mbalula is better these days. Go to Joburg right now after show. I want you to hold your plastics. Just go around Joburg. Just have a walk. You see how we are going to be harassed by, I don't know, his security guards or there's no implementing new jobs for the youth. They must find people who are well trained. Those guys, they are harassing people in Joburg. Go there after show. You tell me.
Morning, Oliver. There is no intelligence in our country. There is no intelligence in our country. I don't know why. It's an embarrassment too. Because this thing would have been wiped out long ago in other countries. Because they have these units that deal with this. The lady spoke truth. He spoke gospel. The old lady just spoke here. And it's the Eastern Cape too, the least problem people are concerned about. If this would have been happening in Joburg, it would have made headline news. But yeah, that's the state of our country, and that's the state of my province, the Eastern Cape. It will not be taken off because it's the Eastern Cape. Soviet, King William Star.
Good morning, Oliver. This is Pagi in Cape Town. You know what Julius Malema said last night? Indeed, you just put it quite right that it was highly anticipated, one of those statements that he made yesterday. In my opinion, I think this statement was wrongly placed. He was supposed to have actually organized a rally somewhere and announced what he announced yesterday. He actually seems to be, projecting that he himself is the constitution of the EFF. Just listen to the manner in which he speaks. I think, in my opinion, he called it upon himself. He fell on his sword. But anyway, also, in furtherance to that, I think many people are still going to respond to what Julius Malema said last night. But anyway, that's how it goes. It's politics. This is Mzansi, back in Cape Town.
Let's go to the lines. Hassan in Johannesburg, you want to react on the conversation with Dr. Thomas Hausen this morning. Go for it.
Yeah, the retired professor, I think if his students marked his works, I don't think he'll get high marks. You asked him simple issues about multilateralism, etc. I don't mind because he's an ideologue for the powerful. I've seen his work on corporations, mining corporations on the continent. He worked with Renamo. That is fine. But I think can we at least have a discussion about how to move society further up? We can argue with people from the right, but he must bring something to the party. He has not done that.
Yeah. Many argue, though, however, importantly, that multilateralism never quite existed.
No, I know the point, but I think South Africa must be given credit for trying to reshape these bodies that were not made in our image. All these bodies were not made in South Africa's image. They were made in the image of Europeans and the powerful. Even if the cricket club, Cricket ICC, was called the Imperial Cricket body. Yeah. So clearly. So I think it's a noble struggle that South Africa has started and others have taken upon it. But Thomas Hausen doesn't seem to recognize it. He just repeat and repeat.
Hassan, thank you so much for your call. Really do appreciate it. That is Hassan calling us from Johannesburg. Kathy Mutlahlane has just gotten into studio. Kathy, I spoke this morning to the Department of Water and Sanitation. Now, we heard from the Swartland municipality that they don't own the retention dams in Riverlands that had caused the damage, right? They said the department owns it. The department says, we don't own it. I ask who owns it. They say, we don't know who owns it. You do the municipal watch. How often does national government leave local government in the lurch like that?
Look, I think the problems are very complex, especially around water ownership, because then you have the involvement of the water boards, and it's always easy to sort of pass the buck, right, and not take accountability and responsibility. But what you would expect from both those departments, if they were taking accountability, was to say, well, we don't own it, but we know that the department owns it, or that the department owns, or the department says we don't own it, but we know that local government owns it. So it just shows again that there's a cycle of a lack of accountability. And so as long as it's up in the air, nobody actually feels that they have to give an answer, right?
And yet the community suffers, unfortunately. Yeah.
It's an interesting one.
That's it for myself and the team here on SAfm Breakfast. I'm back with you tomorrow morning. Lots to talk about. But Kathy Motlatlana is up next.
Thank you, Oliver. Essential cover from Outsurance pays out claims in cash, allowing you to choose your own panel beater. SMS card to 43187 now.
Top stories for this hour. Busa speaks on the proposed Eskom electricity tariff hike, and Malema calls for unity within the EFF. Good morning, I'm Eva Chipa. The Energy and Environment Director at Business Unity South Africa, Busa, Happy Kambule, says the constant increases in electricity tariffs sends a message internationally that the country doesn't have control over its electricity pricing policy. This after Eskom proposed a 36% electricity tariff hike. Kambule says if the cost keeps on increasing, companies will start looking for places where they can cut costs or reduce rate for electricity. He adds that Eskom needs to rather ensure that there is cost recovery of the unpaid electricity debt.
We think that if there is no cost accounting and cost recovery that is done in the right way, you're going to put pressures on those that who can actually pay. And that's what's essentially happening at the same time. And then we have to really relook this issue around cross-subsidization, because some of these costs are sitting because we've got cross-subsidization for parts of the electricity system that no longer apply. As a result of that, we still have cost pressures that are increasing the price of electricity, and yet they no longer actually fit the purpose in terms of the cross-subsidization complement of the electricity price that we're paying.
EFF leader Julius Malema has called for maximum unity and loyalty as the party faces an exodus of members. Last week, the party's deputy president and Malema's lifelong friend defected to the MK party. He was joined by Mzwanele Manyi with fears that other members could join them. Addressing the party's Gauteng ground forces in Soweto last night, Malema urged members to guard against those he said are out to betray their struggle and undermine their generational mission.
It is now time to build an iron wall in defense of our movement as we confront not only our historical enemy, but those amongst us who wish to see the death of this revolutionary movement. We must unite and close ranks against any and all elements that may seek to use our National People's Assembly as an opportunity to infiltrate and destroy the EFF. We must guard against opportunism, factionalism and self-entitlement, greed, and all attempts to distract us from our generational mission.
In other news, the three accused robbers in President Cyril Ramaphosa's Palapala game farm in Limpopo are appearing in the Mudumule Regional Court for pre-trial. The accused are facing several charges including theft and money laundering, conspiracy to commit housebreaking with the intent to steal. They are accused of stealing over $580,000 at the game farm. Jabulani Baloy reports.
The accused siblings, Frolian and Rilansha Joseph, have been granted 5,000 and 10,000 rand bail respectively. Frolian was a domestic worker on the farm when the burglary and theft was committed. The co-accused, David, was not granted bail as is deemed a flight risk. The three accused have been linked to a burglary at President Ramaphosa's game farm in February 2020. They are now back in the regional court for pre-trial. Jabulani Baloyi, SABC News, Polokwane.
And looking further afield, President Joe Biden received an over 4-minute standing ovation as he arrived to address the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. He was lauded by thousands of delegates gathered inside the United Center basketball arena, with his speech interrupted by constant chants. Biden's exit from the race and re-energized the party behind his Vice President Kamala Harris. This is how Biden rallied the crowd for the new Democratic presidential nominee.
Are you ready to vote for freedom? Are you ready to vote for democracy and for America? Let me ask you, are you ready to elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz?
Biden reiterated his long-standing message against the party's Republican rivals, warning that the agenda of former President Donald Trump was a fight to preserve the country's democracy and the battle for the soul of America. Biden suggested that his win in 2020 was only the start as he handed the baton to Harris.
That democracy has prevailed. Democracy has delivered. And now democracy must be preserved. You've heard me say it before. We're facing an inflection point. One of those rare moments in history when the decisions we make now will determine the fate of our nation and the world for decades to come. That's not hyperbole, I mean it literally. We're in a battle for the very soul of America.
Recapping the top story for this hour, the Energy and Environment Director at Business Unity South Africa, Happy Kambule, says the constant increases in electricity tariffs sends a message internationally that the country doesn't have control over its electricity pricing policy. I'll be back at the bottom of the hour. For SAfm News, I'm Eva Chipa.
And that's the news for this hour. Theft, accident and 1 million rand liability cover, all covered by Outsurance Essential. Get a quote today. SMS car to 43187. Your car may be old, but driving without insurance is a risk every time you're on the road. Don't take the gamble. Outsurance Essential is affordable insurance for older cars, giving you up to 1 million rand liability cover and loads more. Plus, claims are paid in cash, so you can use your own panel beater. Outsurance Essential is priced for cars older than 5 years, valued under 125,000 rand and not financed. SMS car to 43187 or call 08600 60,000 today. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
SAfm 104 to 107 nationwide.
Oscar and Emmy winner Kevin Costner is John Dutton, a sixth-generation homesteader and devoted father. John controls the largest contiguous ranch in the United States, operating in a corrupt world where politicians are compromised by influential oil and lumber corporations and where land grabs make developers billions. Shifting alliances, unsolved murders, open wounds, and hard-earned respect puts Dutton's property in constant conflict with those it borders, an expanding town, an Indian reservation, and America's first national park. Channel your inner drama with Yellowstone, Saturdays at 9:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
Every day, our children are exposed to relentless marketing of unhealthy foods where they live, learn, and play. This aggressive marketing of unhealthy foods to children can shape their eating habits and food preferences for the rest of their lives. I'm your host, Crystal Alderson. Is Big Food stalking our children? Watch Chew on This on healer.org on Thursday, 15th August at 3 p.m.
Get your payments done with the utmost security and convenience when you purchase a TV license now. With our new secure payment systems with a one-time PIN OTP feature and the choice of receiving your OTP via SMS or email, you can ensure prompt and secure payments. The additional use of capture will protect you against spam and automated data attractions. With TV licenses, you can enjoy watching all your favorite shows or movies that matter to you. Get yours today. Visit www.tvlic.co.za.
The Talking Point with Kathy Mosasana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
I remember
remember in 2009 how my dreams to be in politics was almost crushed. I was a fourth grader in a social science period when I bravely asked my teacher why there wasn't enough female participation in African politics. My then social science teacher, who had a proud face when he answered me, said, "Politics aren't for women. Politics are a man's job. Women have their own roles and specific duties, and politics is just not one of them." At that time, I knew there was something wrong with his answer. But I wasn't ready to challenge a teacher who believed and thought he knew what he was saying. So it was until high school where I started Googling or searching for ways or reasons why there weren't African women in politics. One answer that kept resonating was patriarchy. Like in most African households or workspaces, patriarchy in politics denies women the right to see themselves as equals. It denies women the right to lead and make decisions like their male counterparts. I, for one, wanted to know how a young African woman like me can help end patriarchy in politics. So I found Afrofeminism. Finding Afrofeminism to me was therefore an eye-opener. And not because I was familiar with the word Afro and feminism, but because finally there was a name for a group of people who, like me, are aware of the gender inequalities between men and women, especially in African politics. To me, being a young African woman who identifies as Afrofeminist is not only important, but crucial, especially in a continent where women have always been preferred to be happy and not angry. Well, let me tell you something. The absence of my anger is a blessing that shouldn't be celebrated. I feel that angry is what you and I should be in the face of social and political injustice.
That's gender equality activist and chemical engineer there, Morunwa Motele. It's 12 after 9 o'clock. Welcome to The Talking Point. I'm Kathy Mutlahlana. Pleasure to have you with us on the show this morning. It's a Tuesday morning. We're getting right into the week. I hope that it's been going well for you so far. There'll be plenty for us to talk about in the next hour on the open line, and certainly a specific question I'm going to be asking you, something I'd like your views, your reflections on. And yes, it is one of those that is a no-brainer given the events of the last couple of days. It is a Tuesday. What you can expect in the second hour of the show, we'll be talking finance with Lutando Mzilikazi. She, of course, is a founder of a financial education brand called Money Views. She'll be joining us this morning as we talk about readiness for retirement, and she's standing in for Brian Hirsch, who is away. The final hour of the show, we'll be looking at the South African Literary Awards, and in particular marking the contributions that women have made to South African literature. And I think our literary journey as a country is one of incredible evolution, right? Because we move from a history where women were literally written out of the history books. Their contributions to our society, their contributions to even the struggle was to a large extent erased. And we now, of course, have an emergence of women that are not only telling their stories, but that are taking it upon themselves to tell the stories of those that have gone before us, to show that women have always been part of the story, that we've always been politically active and involved in different aspects of our society. You know, that proverb, right, that says that until the lion learns, to tell his own tale, the story will always glorify the hunter. The story will always speak the victory, of the hunter. And in many ways, I think that we are at that point in our society where literature has become a way of changing the narrative, a way of retelling the South African story, especially from the context of women. So we'll be in conversation with Eleanor Sisulu, and I'm looking forward. And she, of course, is an author, human rights activist, and she's incredibly passionate about literature. So we'll be having a conversation with her in the final hour of the show. So we're going to kick it off with the open line. I'm getting ready to take your calls. I don't know what you were doing last night, but I certainly was tuned onto my TV watching out of Soweto, right? The EFF leader Julius Malema's response following the weekend and the news last week that Floyd Shivambu is exiting the party for the MK party. What is clear is that Julius Malema is hurt. It's clear that he feels blindsided. It's clear that he's still very much trying to make sense of the moment and trying to make sense of Floyd's departure. And, I think if you've lived a little, right, you have probably had similar experiences before. Once or twice where people have walked away from you, haven't given you clear reasons why. Maybe they've just started blue ticking you, and you are unable to make sense of it. And yesterday, of course, he said, he's declaring the mourning period over. Let those who left go. Don't say anything more. But I actually think that he's in need of advice right now. And in this country, we are our brother's keepers, aren't we? So this morning, I want advice for Julius. What advice would you have for Julius? If you've been down and out before in the doldrums, not really understanding what is going on in your life, what do you think that you can do? What do you think that he can do to actually get himself out of this moment that he is in? Yes, he says he doesn't need the advice, but I think this morning, let's give Julius some advice. What advice do you have for Julius? Please, 086 000 2032. That's the number to dial. On the WhatsApp voice note line, 0614 104 107. Yeah, I can see the phone lines already starting to go. Advice for Julius. What does he need to do to pull himself toward himself and move forward from this moment? And what are the risks of not actually being able to move forward?
20 outfits of the Premier League are back on the battlefield for another spectacular season, with ambitions to play the world's most competitive and compelling football.
Rodri! City 3! West Ham 1!
This is the massive fight for the ultimate glory.
Caicedo, is he going to try and beat it from inside his own half? Oh, Moises Caicedo! I can't believe it! What a way to score your first Chelsea goal!
Experience the 2024-2025 Premier League season on Saturdays at 3 p.m. Live on SABC3 and at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Also available on SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game. SABC Sport, the proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024, celebrates Team SA medalists.
Oh, this is close!
Sabine and the South Africans finally get a medal with the silver, and at last, Akani Sabine is an Olympic medalist. I'm really pleased for Sabine.
Everyone has been wishing for a medal for me, and I've got my medal now. I'm really happy with getting the medal.
For the love of the game.
SAfm is celebrating its 88th birthday, and what better way to celebrate than with you, our loyal listener. We will be giving away 8,800 to 10 lucky listeners during the month of August. To stand a chance of winning, stay tuned to SAfm and SMS the keyword SAfm88 followed by your name to 41391 and listen to the station throughout the day, where you could be selected as a winner. SMSs are charged at R1.50 per SMS. Free SMSs and SMS bundles do not apply.
happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
The Talking Point with Kathy Mosasana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
You owe it to me to tell me what wrong did I do, so I don't do it to SG. He said nothing. It's a political decision. I don't believe that, but I respect it. It is his personal decision, which we must all respect, and we must all move forward. This chapter of wanting to concentrate on individuals must end now. We have an immediate task when we leave here. We cannot be told by the media what needs to happen. We said to you, we are going to the Third National People's Assembly. That's where the focus is. We are going to the by-elections in some of the wards. That's where the focus is. Stop concentrating on what is gone. It's water under the bridge. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you say. It's done. To overemphasize it is a deliberate agenda to redirect us from what is our agenda. You have mourned, it's enough. You can't mourn forever. Today ends the mourning period. We are ending the mourning period today. Stop sulking. Go and revive your branch. Keep yourself busy with the branches of the EFF. Keep yourself busy with the community issues on the ground. Let's stop complaining and moaning about people who are gone.
Yeah, some of the comments then from that media briefing last night by Julius Malema. It is the open line. I'm taking your advice for Julius, and of course anything else you want to put on the agenda this morning. Billy Masha in Skukune, good morning.
A very good morning, sis. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
At the age of 50, I can tell Julius Malema to learn from ANC itself. He became a member of the ANC Youth League at an early age. He has seen leaders coming and going. The ANC remained. This problem is one. He keeps himself forever. He overstays his visit. Go to Kosas. When he was in Kosas, he destroyed Kosas. I think he was the last known president of Kosas. No one else followed him. He came to Youth League. He's the last known leader of the Youth League. No one else after him. He's now destroying his own making. EFF. Something which we thought at least he will excel. He'll be able to learn from what the ANC has come over age. That's his problem. He does not understand the difference between a member and a friend. In an organization, we work with members, not friends. And in the family, we work with siblings, not friends. We don't choose our siblings. We like them or not. They are our brothers and they are our sisters. If anything goes wrong with them, whether we like them or we don't like them, we must go and comfort them. Even if we pretend, that's what we must do. It's a matter of mask. So in an organization, we keep members. We work with them according to the principles of the organization. Not as if we are in a drinking spree. Not as if we pass each other a loose straw. It doesn't work the way. That's his dilemma.
So, Billy, what are you saying? Are you saying that there are no boundaries, that he needs to have boundaries between himself and members of his party?
Exactly, sir. Let me tell you one thing. You know what made the ANC to be where it is now? It's because Thabo Mbeki and Jacob Zuma married from the same family. And they thought they were friends. And they ran the ANC like friends. Even when Zuma was a problem in 1997, Thabo Mbeki kept him there. He kept him because it was his own bargaining. You keep wrong people around yourself until they cost you. He kept Joseph Butani here around himself until Joseph cost him. That's his problem. Is he a friend? It's a problem. Don't keep friends around you. We're in an organization. Thank you.
Billy, thanks for that contribution. Yeah, sound advice. The issue of boundaries, right, and the importance of those boundaries. One, I've never really thought about it in a political sense, because the way that these figures refer to each other is as comrades, as brothers. So one naturally thinks that the bond is far beyond that of just being a card-carrying member. And that's also how it's sold to the rest of the members of these organizations. Sintu, you're out in Midrand. Good morning. Your advice for Julius.
So, you know, you only give advice to those who are willing to listen. But be that as it may, they've asked us to come up with a certain advice. We don't even know what Julius will be able to listen. You see, you know, I watched that thing, but not all of it. But what I've realized that Julius was not giving any political direction in his own party to say that how do we rescue ourselves from the situation we're in. All what I hear there were the lots of insults to his former comrades. Okay, let me say, even people within the organization who still remain in the organization, he insulted them. And the third part is that there has been this general perception among ordinary South Africans that Julius is disrespecting his own party members, especially the likes of those, you see, there is no internal democracy within the EFF. But the advice that I can give is for him to remain calm, to remain political matured, and try to redeem. Because if you look and listen to the ordinary AFF members on the ground, they are saying that Julius' time is up. There's going to be a revolt against Julius, you see, if he doesn't change his attitude. But he needs to humble himself and go to each and every region and province and work with comrades to say that how do we take ourselves out of this? Because we cannot run away from the fact that Floyd contributed immensely to where the EFF is right now. For him to declare war against his so-called old comrades is not going to assist. Floyd now is a member of NK, is going to build NK, and then if he's not careful, it's also going to ruin the relationships between NK, the so-called progressive alliances within the parliament. But we will see at the time that he needs a serious advice, and maybe he needs to consult psychologists, you see, or veterans, whoever Julius trusts. He needs to sit down really, Casey. But it was, I understand the shock. 11 years is too much, and then they've been together in the ANC League. Floyd was the spokesperson. But there is something that led to Floyd leave the EFF. Because listen, Julius is still too young, and Floyd also has got ambitions of being the president. You see? Yeah, these are some of the things that they need to consider. But right now, they are going to divide the so-called left-leaning parties.
Okay.
In relation to this matter.
All right, Sintu out in Midrand. Yeah, thanks for that advice. And just what you're saying there around how deeply hurt it is that Julius has been. Do politicians actually trust each other to that extent? And you heard him say that if he gets up, he would leave Floyd with his drink, and he would be able to come back and not even have a doubt about, whether or not he should drink from that same cup. But unless, maybe the experience of relationships when people are in politics is different. But from the outside looking in, doesn't it look like none of them trust each other fully? That you're always suspicious of the other? That you've got to just consistently keep watching your back? I don't know, maybe it's because one is looking at it as an outsider looking in. And it goes back to what Billy Masha was saying, that perhaps there should be no friends in politics, that you must have boundaries. The members of the party must be treated as exactly that. But I guess at the end of the day, you're also still human. Oh, what to do? Let's take a couple of your voice notes. It'll lead us into the 9:30 headlines.
Morning, Sisiketi. Julius must respect Jacob Zuma. Now we know what is Jacob Zuma is made of. Jacob Zuma never forgive. All those insults Malema was hailing at Zuma in parliament at the time he was a president, they are echoing back to him. Zuma pretended like he wanted to join EFF when they went there to drink tea. It wasn't for tea. Zuma is clever. He's now tearing Malema piece by piece. Jacob Zuma where he is smiling. And even Floyd Shibambo is not safe where he is now. Lord Chalumo Matuzenj. Let's just wait and see. I'll pack it for now. Lizzo from Brixton.
Good morning, Kathy. Julius must take a deep breath, drink a lot of cold water. He must respect. He must be humble. And he must respect his supporters. I thank you.
Bringing news making headlines for this hour. The ANC is working on taking control of the Tshwane Metro following its successful installation of Tata Morero as the City of Johannesburg's executive mayor. In other news, the Energy and Environment Director at Business Unity South Africa says the constant increases in electricity tariffs sends a message internationally that the country doesn't have control over its electricity pricing policy. This after Eskom proposed a 36% electricity tariff hike. And lastly, Democratic activists in the US have been gleeful by the encouraging poll numbers for their candidate Kamala Harris. However, outside the convention hall, thousands of pro-Palestinian demonstrators demanded that Harris take a stronger stand against Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip. I'll be back at 10 for SAfm News. I'm Eva Chipa.
It's Elimination Week on the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday evening at 7 on SABC2 as the bottom 6 bake to stay in the competition. It's all about desserts as the contestants recreate their versions of a family favorite, warm and comforting pudding. But will it be enough to impress the judges and earn them a spot in the next round? That's the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday at 7. Repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. Only on SABC2.
Our Tugs have a great plan to illustrate that they are not just intelligent students in class, but on the field of play as well. Meanwhile, the Zuma-based outfit want nothing except for 3 points to run away from the unpleasant zone. The capital city confronts eThekwini. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Catch the Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game. University of Pretoria Ladies FC versus Lindelani Ladies FC on Sunday 25 August at 11 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The Talking Point with Kathy Mosasana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
You're listening to The Talking Point. It is your open line. You get to set the national agenda. Of course, the question I asked this morning is advice for Julius, how to pull himself out of the... What other phrase can I use for this? Out of the just... What's the word I'm looking for? The pit that he is in, because that really is the sense that I get. I'm taking your call 086 000 2032. That is the number to dial. David, you're calling from Pietermaritzburg. Good morning.
Thanks, Kathy.
Yes.
I was seriously concerned about the story of a lady who was abused, physically abused in Croatia. And we must thank DECO for coming to the rescue by ensuring that she comes back to her country. Yeah, but I wanted to check because the lady said when she was asked during the show yesterday as to what was she interested in, she said she would like to see the people who physically attacked her being charged and face the law. So I was checking as to what is the role of DECO in trying to assist her with a wish, and also maybe if people like